Hey guys, before we begin tonight's quiet journey into the distant past, take a moment to settle in. Adjust your pillow, soften your breathing, and let the worries of the modern world drift a little farther away. Tonight, you won't need your phone, your inbox, or your morning alarm. Instead, you'll wake somewhere very different. Somewhere nearly 1100 years ago. Our destination tonight is England, in the year 900 AD. But before you get too comfortable, if you enjoy slow, cozy history made for sleep, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps this little corner of the internet keep growing. And if you'd like, let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is where you are. Now, if you're comfortable, close your eyes if you'd like, and imagine the darkness slowly changing around you, and let's quietly wander into England's dark ages together. You wake before sunrise. Not because an alarm rings beside your bed, but because the world around you refuses to sleep quietly. A rooster crows somewhere beyond the wooden walls. A sheep lets out a sleepy bleat. Nearby, someone coughs into the cold morning air. The sound echoes through the small building long before daylight reaches the horizon. For a few moments, you lie perfectly still. The room is almost completely dark. The only light comes from a few glowing embers resting beneath yesterday's ashes in the central hearth. Their faint orange glow barely reaches the corners of the room, where rough wooden beams disappear into shadow. The air smells of smoke. It always smells of smoke. Every meal, every cold evening, every winter night leaves another layer of soot drifting upward toward the roof. There is no chimney carrying the smoke neatly outside. Instead, much of it escapes through tiny openings in the thatched roof, eventually. Your eyes sting just a little. Welcome to England in 900 AD. Comfort, at least by modern standards, is a luxury you haven't invented yet. You slowly sit upright. The mattress beneath you isn't really a mattress. It's a cloth sack filled with straw, reeds, or dried grasses gathered months ago. At first, it seemed reasonably soft. Now, after many nights, every lump seems to know exactly where your shoulder blades are. If you've ever complained about a hotel mattress, this would be an excellent time to apologize. You pull a wool blanket around your shoulders. It feels coarse against your skin, but it has kept you warm through another chilly night. Wool scratches a little, certainly, yet it is one of the most valuable materials you own. Outside, the air is cold enough that your breath briefly appears in front of your face. England's climate in the early Middle Ages is damp more often than dramatic. Rain arrives frequently. Fog settles across fields without asking permission. Winters can be difficult, although not always brutally snowy. Moisture seems determined to visit every corner of your life. Even your shoes feel slightly damp. Speaking of shoes, you slip your feet into simple leather footwear, handmade by local craftsmen or perhaps repaired several times by your own family. There are no rubber soles, no comfortable padding, and certainly no memory foam. The leather has become stiff from yesterday's mud. You'll wear them anyway. Because owning shoes at all is something worth appreciating. The doorway opens with a gentle creak. Cool morning air flows inside. Outside, dawn is only beginning to color the eastern sky with pale shades of gray and soft blue. The village is waking. Thin streams of smoke rise from neighboring homes. Dogs wander lazily between buildings. A few chickens have already decided that everyone else should also be awake. They take their responsibilities very seriously. Unlike your modern alarm clock, however, chickens cannot be snoozed. The village itself is small. Perhaps only 20 or 30 families live here. Most homes look remarkably similar. Low wooden walls. Roofs made from straw or reeds. Small doorways designed to keep warmth inside. Very few windows. Glass is rare and expensive, so most openings are covered with wooden shutters instead. The result is cozy. If your definition of cozy includes sharing your living space with smoke, mud, livestock, and the occasional adventurous mouse. Life in 900 AD revolves around survival. Not wealth. Not entertainment. Not vacations. Every sunrise brings another list of essential tasks. Food must be grown. Animals must be fed. Tools must be repaired. Firewood must be gathered. Nothing happens automatically. There are no supermarkets waiting patiently just beyond the village. No delivery drivers. No electricity humming quietly in the background. Every comfort begins with someone's hard work. And usually, that someone is you. As you walk across the village, your footsteps sink slightly into soft earth. There are no paved streets here. Only narrow dirt paths worn smooth by generations of people, carts, sheep, cattle, and far too many muddy boots. After heavy rain, these paths become thick with sticky mud. Today is better. Still muddy. But better. The scent of damp grass mixes with wood smoke. Nearby, cows are already stirring inside simple wooden enclosures. To modern ears, the village may sound noisy. Birds singing. Animals calling. Axes striking wood. Children laughing. Someone pounding grain. Someone else arguing gently over whose goat wandered into whose vegetable patch. Life begins early because daylight is precious. Candles require expensive wax. Oil lamps consume valuable fuel. Sunlight costs nothing. So everyone tries to use as much of it as possible. You pause for a moment and look toward the surrounding countryside. Rolling green fields stretch into the distance. Patches of woodland cover nearby hills. Small streams wind quietly through the landscape. It is beautiful. Not because it is untouched, but because generations of ordinary people have shaped it through endless work. Every field represents countless hours of digging, planting, harvesting, and hope. Hope that the weather will cooperate. Hope that disease will spare the crops. Hope that next winter won't be harsher than the last. In this world, survival depends as much upon good fortune as hard work. And fortune has always been somewhat unpredictable. The first task of your day begins almost immediately. Before breakfast. Before conversation. Before the village has fully awakened. The fire must be brought back to life. There are no matches waiting in a kitchen drawer. No button to press for instant heat. Last night's fire has been carefully preserved beneath a layer of warm ash, protecting a few glowing embers through the darkness. Your mother kneels beside the hearth. She gently brushes away the gray ash with a wooden stick until tiny red sparks appear. Still alive. Still warm. A handful of dry straw is placed on top, followed by thin twigs collected the previous afternoon. She bends close and blows softly. At first, nothing happens. Then a curl of pale smoke rises. Another gentle breath. A faint orange flame appears. Within moments, the fire is alive once more, crackling softly beneath the blackened cooking pot. Every morning begins this way. Keeping a fire burning is one of the most important skills in the household. Without it there is no warm meal, no boiled water, no comfortable place to escape the damp chill that often settles over England. Outside, the village continues to wake. A rooster announces the morning with absolute confidence, as though he alone has persuaded the sun to rise. Several others quickly join in. Apparently they all wish to claim the same achievement. The sound carries across the fields, followed by the gentle lowing of cattle waiting to be fed. You step outside your small cottage. The cool morning air brushes against your face, carrying the fresh scent of damp grass and wood smoke. Tiny drops of dew sparkle on every blade of grass, catching the first rays of sunlight. The village is smaller than you expected. Perhaps 30 or 40 simple buildings stand scattered around an open space where neighbors often gather. Most cottages are built from timber frames filled with woven branches covered in clay. Their roofs are thick with thatch, made from straw or reeds gathered from nearby fields and marshes. None of the homes are identical. Each has been built by the family who lives inside, prepared countless times over the years with whatever materials were close at hand. Nothing is wasted here. A broken plank becomes a shelf. An old rope is tied together again. Even worn clothing is patched until the fabric can serve no longer. Modern life often encourages replacement. Life in 900 AD encourages repair. Near the center of the village stands a simple wooden well. Already, several women and older children have arrived carrying wooden buckets suspended from shoulder poles. Drawing water is a daily responsibility, repeated morning and evening without complaint. The well is more than a place to collect water. It is where neighbors exchange greetings, share news, discuss the weather, and occasionally settle small disagreements before the day's work begins. No newspapers arrive here. No written notices are pinned to a board. Information travels from person to person, carried by conversation and memory. A traveler passing through yesterday may have brought news from another village. Perhaps a successful harvest nearby. Perhaps rumors of Viking ships seen along the eastern coast. Perhaps simply word that a bridge has washed away after heavy rain. Every piece of news spreads naturally through quiet conversations like ripples across a pond. You notice that nearly everyone is already busy. An elderly man repairs a wooden fence using pegs carved by hand. A young boy carries kindling almost as tall as he is. Two women shake woven blankets outside their cottages, sending tiny clouds of dust into the morning sunlight. Even the smallest children have little tasks. Gathering eggs. Watching younger brothers or sisters. Picking herbs from a nearby garden. Life here is built upon contribution. Everyone helps in some way. As you watch the village come fully alive, another realization slowly settles in. No one seems rushed. People work steadily. Patiently. There are no clocks hanging on cottage walls. No hourly schedules. No alarms reminding them where to be next. Instead, the sun itself keeps time. Morning is for beginning. Midday is for working. Evening is for returning home. Night is for resting. The rhythm has remained unchanged for generations. A dog wanders lazily across the village green before settling beside the warmth of the blacksmith's workshop, already anticipating another busy day. Nearby, smoke begins rising from more chimneys as breakfast cooks over open fires. The smell is simple but comforting. Fresh barley porridge. Warm oat bread. Perhaps a little cheese left from yesterday. It is not a feast. But after a night's sleep beneath a wool blanket, it is more than enough to begin another day. You take one last look across the quiet village. The cottages. The gardens. The fields stretching beyond the last fence. The people beginning another ordinary morning. Only a short while ago, this world felt distant and unfamiliar. Already, it is beginning to feel surprisingly human. And as the sun climbs a little higher into the clear English sky, your first full day in the year 900 AD is only just beginning. By now, the sun has climbed above the treetops, bathing the village in a warm, golden light. The cool mist of dawn has almost disappeared, leaving behind a fresh scent of damp earth and growing crops. The day promises fair weather, and that is welcome news. Good weather means work can continue. In a farming village, nearly every task depends upon the seasons. You follow the narrow path leading beyond the cottages, where the open fields begin. They stretch farther than you expected, divided not by neat fences, but by strips of cultivated land that different families work throughout the year. Some fields are green with young crops. Others have already been harvested. A few are left empty to recover their strength before planting begins again. The people of 900 AD may not understand modern agricultural science, but they have learned through generations of careful observation that the land must sometimes be allowed to rest. Nature, after all, has its own rhythm. A farmer waves as you approach. His tunic is plain, woven from coarse wool, and tied at the waist with a simple leather belt. His hands are rough and weathered, carrying the marks of many years spent working the soil. He smiles warmly before returning to his work. There is little time for long conversations this morning. The crops will not wait. Nearby, an ox slowly pulls a heavy wooden plow through the earth. The great animal moves with remarkable patience, each steady step cutting deep furrows into the soil. Behind it, the farmer guides the plow with practiced hands, carefully keeping each row as straight as possible. It is slow work. Very slow. A single field may require many days to prepare. Watching the ox, you cannot help but admire its calm determination. It never seems to hurry. Perhaps it understands something that modern life often forgets. Important work takes time. As you continue walking, you notice women tending small gardens beside their cottages. These plots may be modest, but they provide valuable food throughout the year. Onions grow beside cabbage. Beans climb simple wooden poles. Leeks sway gently in the breeze. Small patches of herbs fill the air with pleasant aromas. Mint, sage, parsley, thyme. These plants flavor meals, but they are also used in simple folk remedies passed down from one generation to the next. Every garden reflects careful planning. Nothing is planted without purpose. Beyond the gardens, several children are collecting eggs from a small chicken coop. They work together, carrying wicker baskets with great care. One little girl proudly holds up a freshly laid egg as though she has discovered buried treasure. In many ways, she has. Every egg is valuable. It may become tomorrow's breakfast, or it may hatch into another chicken that will provide food for years to come. Nothing is taken for granted. Not the harvest. Not the animals. Not even a single egg. A short distance away, an elderly woman sits on a low wooden stool spinning wool into thread using a simple drop spindle. Her hands move with quiet confidence, drawing soft fibers into a long, even strand. She has likely repeated this movement tens of thousands of times throughout her life. Perhaps hundreds of thousands. Her granddaughter watches closely, trying to copy the technique. The thread breaks. They both laugh. Patiently, the older woman begins again, showing each step one more time. This is how knowledge travels. Not through classrooms. Not through printed books. But through careful observation. One pair of hands teaching another. As midday approaches, the village becomes busier still. The blacksmith's hammer rings steadily from his workshop. Its clear metallic rhythm echoes across the settlement, blending with the cheerful chatter of neighbors and the occasional bleating of sheep. Nearby, the carpenter carefully shapes a thick oak beam with an adze, sending fragrant wood shavings curling onto the ground. Nothing here is made by machines. Every bowl, every cart, every wooden spoon, every door, every table. Someone has shaped it by hand. That thought gives every object a quiet dignity. Even the simplest stool represents hours of careful work. You pause beneath the shade of a broad oak tree and look back toward the village. It is not wealthy. It is not grand. Yet it feels complete. Everyone has a place. Everyone has a purpose. The farmer grows the grain. The shepherd tends the sheep. The blacksmith shapes the iron. The carpenter builds the homes. The women spin, weave, bake, and preserve food. The children learn by helping. The elders guide with wisdom earned over many seasons. Life here depends not on wealth, but on one another. And as the church bell rings softly in the distance, calling attention to the passing of another peaceful morning, you begin to realize that surviving in England during the year 900 AD is not simply about strength. It is about community. It is about patience. And above all, it is about working together, one ordinary day at a time. The afternoon slowly gives way to evening. The bright sunlight softens into a warm golden glow that stretches across the fields, turning every blade of grass into a ribbon of light. Long shadows reach out from the cottages, and the day's work begins to slow. One by one, the villagers return home. The farmer wipes the soil from his hands before placing his wooden hoe against the cottage wall. The shepherd whistles softly, guiding his flock through the familiar gate. The sheep hardly need encouragement. They know the path as well as he does, and they wander into their enclosure with quiet determination. The blacksmith allows the fire in his forge to cool. The steady ringing of his hammer, which echoed through the village all day, finally falls silent. For a moment, all you hear is birdsong. It is a peaceful sound. You walk toward the center of the village, where a few neighbors pause beside the well before returning home. They exchange quiet greetings and speak about the day's work. Someone is pleased with the condition of the barley. Another hopes for gentle rain later in the week. An elderly woman remarks that the swallows are flying low this evening, perhaps a sign that tomorrow's weather may change. Whether she is correct or not hardly matters. The conversation itself is part of village life. News travels from one friendly voice to another. As smoke rises from every chimney, the comforting smell of supper fills the cool evening air. Tonight's meal is simple. A pot of barley porridge simmers above the fire. Freshly baked oat bread rests upon a wooden board. There is a little cheese, a handful of onions, and perhaps some cabbage from the garden. If the family has been fortunate, there may even be a small piece of salted pork left from earlier in the year. No one expects a grand feast. A warm meal shared together is enough. Inside the cottage, the fire fills the room with a soft orange glow. The walls, woven from timber and wattle, seem almost alive as shadows dance across them. The day's tools are carefully placed in their usual places. Nothing is left lying about carelessly. Every knife, every bucket, every wooden spoon has value. Replacing them would require many hours of work. As supper comes to an end, the youngest children begin to grow sleepy. One curls up beside the fire with a wool blanket wrapped around small shoulders. Another leans against a parent's arm, struggling to keep tired eyes open. An older grandparent smiles gently before beginning a familiar story. It is not a tale about kings or mighty warriors. It is about a clever fox that outsmarted a greedy crow many years ago. The children have heard it many times before. They listen just as carefully as they did the first time. Outside, darkness slowly settles across the countryside. Without towns or cities filled with bright lights, the night sky becomes astonishingly clear. Thousands upon thousands of stars appear overhead. The broad band of the Milky Way stretches from one horizon to the other, brighter than most people in the modern world have ever seen. You step outside for one final look. The village is almost completely quiet now. Only the occasional bark of a dog or the distant hoot of an owl breaks the silence. The air feels cool and fresh. Above you, the same stars that watched over Roman Britain now shine upon Anglo-Saxon England. They will continue shining over Norman castles, medieval kingdoms, and countless generations yet to come. Standing beneath that vast sky, you think about everything you have discovered during this very first day. At sunrise, this world felt unfamiliar. The clothes were different. The homes were simpler. The tools seemed strange. Yet as the hours passed, something became clear. the people themselves are not so different. They work hard. They care for their families. They help their neighbors. They laugh at small moments. They worry about tomorrow. And they find comfort in sharing a meal beside a warm fire at the end of a long day. Across more than 1,000 years, those simple hopes remain surprisingly familiar. As the last embers glow quietly inside the cottage, you lie down upon a straw mattress covered with soft wool blankets. The fire gives off its final warmth. The wind whispers gently through the thatched roof. Somewhere outside, a horse shifts quietly in its stable. Your first day in England, in the year 900 AD, has come to an end. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new lessons, and new glimpses into the quiet rhythm of medieval life. But for now, the village sleeps peacefully beneath a sky filled with endless stars. And so do you. The morning sun has now climbed a little higher above the rolling hills of England. A cool mist still lingers over the fields, clinging to the grass like a thin blanket that the earth has not yet decided to fold away. Birds chatter from the hedgerows, and somewhere nearby, the steady rhythm of an axe striking wood echoes through the quiet village. If you plan to survive another winter in the year 900 AD, there is one truth everyone understands. A good home is not a luxury. It is the difference between life and death. You glance toward your family's house. By modern standards, it is small and simple. Its walls lean ever so slightly after years of wind and rain, while the thick thatched roof shows patches where fresh bundles of straw have recently been tied into place. It may not impress an architect, but to you, it is one of the most valuable things you possess. Building a home in this age begins long before the first cold winds arrive. There is no hardware store waiting a short drive away. No trucks delivering lumber. Every beam, every bundle of straw, every handful of clay must be gathered by hand from the surrounding countryside. The work starts in the nearby woodland. With an iron axe that has already served several generations, you and your neighbors carefully select young oak, ash, or hazel trees. Large trees require enormous effort to cut, so smaller trunks are often the practical choice. Each swing of the axe is slow and deliberate. Iron is precious, and replacing a broken tool is never easy. When a tree finally creaks and falls, everyone steps back with quiet satisfaction. One tree may provide the frame for part of a wall, a roof beam, or several fence posts. Nothing is wasted. Even the smaller branches become firewood, tool handles, or woven fencing. Once the timber reaches the village, construction begins with sturdy wooden posts driven deep into the ground. These posts form the skeleton of the house, supporting everything that follows. Between them, flexible hazel branches are woven together like an enormous basket. This ancient technique is known today as wattle. Looking at it from a distance, it almost resembles a giant woven fence standing upright. Of course, woven branches alone will not keep out England's cold winter winds. That is where the mud comes in. Lots of mud. Clay-rich soil is mixed with water, chopped straw, and often animal dung. It may not sound especially appealing, but together these ingredients create a surprisingly durable building material known as daub. The mixture is pressed into every gap in the woven walls by hand. It is messy work. Your hands quickly disappear beneath layers of cool brown clay, and by the end of the day, everyone looks remarkably similar, mostly because everyone is covered in mud from head to toe. Fortunately, fashion magazines have not yet been invented, so no one seems particularly concerned. As the walls slowly dry beneath the late summer sun, they harden into a surprisingly strong surface that helps block the wind and retain precious warmth. Every family knows that winter is patient. It always arrives. And it never forgets where you live. By late summer, your walls have finally dried beneath the warm sun. They are far from perfectly smooth, with small cracks here and there that will need attention before the weather turns cold. Every member of the household notices these tiny imperfections. A crack that seems harmless in August can become an icy draft in December. So, repairs begin almost immediately. Another bucket of daub is mixed, the familiar combination of clay, straw, water, and animal dung. It is carefully pressed into every opening until the walls once again form a solid barrier against the wind. No one expects perfection. They simply hope the walls will remain standing until spring. Now your attention turns upward. The roof is perhaps the most important part of the house. Without it, every autumn rain would soak the bedding, ruin stored grain, and leave the floor deep in mud. A leaking roof is not merely inconvenient, it can threaten a family's survival. Bundles of wheat straw or reeds gathered from nearby marshes are carried to the roof one armful at a time. Beginning at the bottom edge, each bundle is laid carefully over the one below it, creating thick overlapping layers. The pattern resembles the feathers of a sleeping bird. Each bundle is tied securely to wooden rafters using twisted cords made from plant fibers. The work demands patience. One loose bundle can become tomorrow's missing bundle after a strong wind. The finished roof is surprisingly thick, sometimes more than a foot deep. During winter, that thickness traps warm air inside while allowing rainwater to run harmlessly down the sides. A well-made thatched roof may last many years if carefully maintained. Of course, birds occasionally disagree. Sparrows seem convinced that your roof is simply a generous collection of free nesting materials. Throughout the year, they steal tiny pieces of straw whenever they think you are not looking. To be fair, they are excellent recyclers. Inside the house, life remains wonderfully simple. The floor is hard-packed earth, swept regularly with handmade brooms of bundled twigs. There are no polished wooden boards or colorful rugs covering the ground. Instead, fresh rushes may be scattered across the floor to provide a little softness underfoot and help absorb moisture. Every so often they are replaced, keeping the room a little fresher. Furniture is limited but practical. A sturdy wooden table serves as the center of family life. Rough benches stand beside it. Chests hold valuable possessions, extra clothing, tools, perhaps a treasured knife or a small silver brooch passed down through generations. Every object has earned its place. There is no room for unnecessary clutter. Your bed is little more than a wooden frame or a simple platform covered with straw-filled sacks and wool blankets. It is not luxurious, but after a day spent cutting timber, carrying clay, and climbing across rooftops, even a straw mattress feels remarkably welcoming. As evening approaches, the golden light outside begins to soften. Smoke rises gently from neighboring homes, and the comforting scent of wood fires drifts across the village. Families prepare their evening meals while children chase one another between the houses, laughing until they are called inside. You stand for a quiet moment and look at your finished home. It is humble. It is smoky. It leans just a little. But with winter slowly making its way across England, it offers something far more valuable than comfort. It offers shelter. And in the year 900 AD, shelter is one of the greatest blessings a family can hope for. The final days before winter are among the busiest of the entire year. The fields have been harvested, the grain stored as carefully as possible, and now every family turns its attention to the cold months ahead. No one knows exactly what the coming winter will bring. It may be mild, with only a few frosty mornings. Or it may arrive with weeks of bitter winds, frozen ground, and endless rain. The safest choice is always to prepare for the worst. Outside your home, stacks of firewood grow steadily taller. Every log has been cut, split, carried, and piled by hand. Oak burns slowly and warmly, while ash is valued because it burns well even when not completely dry. Every piece of wood is precious. As you add another log to the pile, you cannot help but make a quiet calculation. Will there be enough? Enough wood? Enough grain? Enough salted meat? Enough dried peas? Enough luck? Winter has a way of asking difficult questions. Near the doorway, bundles of herbs hang upside down beneath the shelter of the roof. Mint, sage, thyme, and other useful plants dry slowly in the cool air. Some will flavor simple meals. Others may be used as traditional remedies when coughs and fevers inevitably visit the village. Inside, the hearth once again becomes the heart of the home. A careful spark catches the dry kindling, followed by larger pieces of wood. Before long, orange flames dance gently across the room. Their warmth spreads slowly through the little house, while smoke drifts upward toward the tiny opening in the thatch. The fire provides more than heat. It cooks every meal. It dries damp clothing after a rainy day. It offers light during the long evenings. It brings the family together after hours of work. Around the fire, stories are told. Some speak of brave kings and great battles. Others tell of wandering saints, mysterious forests, or strange creatures said to live beyond the edge of the village. Children listen with wide eyes, although they have heard many of the tales before. Perhaps that is part of their comfort. In a world where so much is uncertain, familiar stories feel almost as valuable as warm blankets. As darkness settles over the countryside, the village becomes wonderfully quiet. Without electric lights, the night belongs once again to the stars. The Milky Way stretches overhead with remarkable clarity, brighter than most people in the modern world will ever see. A dog barks somewhere in the distance. An owl calls from the nearby woodland. Otherwise, there is only silence. You pull the heavy wooden door closed and secure it with a simple wooden bar. It is not a fortress, but it is enough to keep out wandering animals and the cold night wind. Looking around your modest home, you notice every beam, every wall, and every bundle of thatch. None of it came easily. Every part represents days of labor shared by family, friends, and neighbors. In this village, building a house is rarely the work of one person alone. When one family builds, others lend their hands, knowing that one day they will need the same kindness returned. Community is another kind of shelter. Perhaps the strongest one of all. As the fire settles into glowing embers, you wrap yourself once more in your coarse wool blanket. Outside, winter is drawing closer with every passing sunset. But tonight, you are warm. You have a roof above your head. Walls around your family. A fire beside you. And in the England of 900 AD, that is more than enough. The first pale light of dawn spread slowly across the village. A thin layer of mist hangs over the fields, softening the outlines of cottages and fences until everything seems wrapped in a gentle gray blanket. The morning air is cool enough that every breath becomes briefly visible before disappearing into the stillness. Inside your little house, the fire has nearly burned itself out. Only a handful of glowing embers remain beneath the ashes, patiently waiting to be stirred back to life. Before anyone thinks about breakfast, someone kneels beside the hearth, blowing carefully until tiny sparks awaken. Soon, a few dry twigs begin to crackle, followed by thicker pieces of wood. Warmth returns to the room. So does the familiar scent of wood smoke. It is a smell that clings to your clothing, your blankets, your hair, and perhaps even your dreams. You stretch after another night on your straw mattress. Your stomach reminds you that yesterday's supper was modest, and today's meals have not yet been earned. In England during the year 900 AD, food is never taken for granted. Every loaf of bread, every bowl of porridge, every piece of cheese exists because someone spent long hours working for it. There are no overflowing markets waiting around the corner. No cupboards packed with snacks. No convenient kitchens where dinner appears at the touch of a button. Finding enough food is your full-time occupation. Breakfast is wonderfully simple. A small pot hangs over the fire while coarse grains of barley or oats are stirred into water. Slowly, the mixture thickens into a warm porridge. Sometimes a little goat's milk is added if the family has been fortunate. Occasionally a spoonful of honey sweetens the meal, though honey is valuable enough that most families use it sparingly. You take a careful bite. It is warm. Filling. Perhaps not especially exciting. Still, it is far better than beginning the day hungry. If you were hoping for pancakes with maple syrup, crispy bacon, scrambled eggs, fresh orange juice, and a perfectly brewed coffee, you may have accidentally traveled to the wrong millennium. Once breakfast is finished, there is little time to linger. The daylight hours are precious, and every season brings different work. Much of your food comes directly from the fields surrounding the village. The open fields stretch across the countryside in long narrow strips. Rather than each family owning one large piece of land, many villagers farm scattered strips spread throughout the community. It is a system that requires cooperation as much as hard work. Today, you carry a simple wooden hoe across your shoulder. The soil is damp from yesterday's rain. That is good news. Soft ground is easier to work than dry, hardened earth. The crops growing around you are familiar companions. Barley waves gently in the breeze. Oats stand nearby, while patches of rye and wheat promise future loaves of coarse bread. Peas and beans climb wherever they can, adding welcome variety to meals that might otherwise become rather repetitive. Not every harvest succeeds. Some years bring heavy rain. Others bring drought. Sometimes insects arrive without invitation. Sometimes disease quietly spreads through the crops. And sometimes nature simply reminds everyone that she enjoys making farming a very unpredictable profession. No matter how carefully you work, there are never any guarantees. As the morning sun climbs higher, you pause for a moment and look across the peaceful countryside. Birds circle overhead, searching for insects among the fields. In the distance, a shepherd guides his flock across open pasture, while smoke rises lazily from the village behind you. It is a beautiful landscape. But beneath its quiet beauty lies a simple truth. Every mouth in the village depends on these fields. Every child. Every elder. Every family. If the harvest fails, everyone feels the consequences. And that is why each day begins with the same quiet determination. To find enough food for one more day. By the time the sun reaches the middle of the sky, your morning's work has already left your hands rough with dirt and your back pleasantly tired. Farming is rarely exciting, but it has a steady rhythm that soon becomes familiar. Lift the hoe. Turn the soil. Pull the weeds. Repeat. Again. And again. And again. There is a certain peace in knowing exactly what the day requires of you. When it is time for a short rest, you sit beneath the shade of a nearby oak tree. From a small cloth bag, you remove your midday meal. It is wonderfully uncomplicated. A thick slice of dark barley bread. A piece of hard cheese made from goat's or cow's milk. Perhaps a small onion or a handful of peas left over from yesterday's supper. If fortune has smiled upon your household recently, there may even be a strip of salted bacon. But meat is not an everyday luxury. Most families save it for special occasions or stretch it across several meals. You choose slowly. There is no rush. In this world, every bite has value. Nearby, children gather fallen sticks for the evening fire. Even the youngest members of the village have responsibilities. They scare birds away from newly planted fields, help collect eggs, watch younger brothers and sisters, or carry water from the village stream. Childhood exists, of course. But it is shorter than the one you may know today. Everyone contributes where they can. As the afternoon continues, your attention shifts from farming to gathering. The countryside offers many small gifts to those who know where to look. Along the hedgerows grow blackberries in late summer, their dark fruit hidden among sharp thorns. Wild hazelnuts ripen as autumn approaches, while crab apples hang from scattered trees. None of these foods alone could feed a village, but together they provide valuable nourishment. Knowledge is almost as important as strength. An experienced villager can identify edible plants, useful herbs, and dangerous berries with remarkable confidence. That wisdom has been passed from grandparents to parents and from parents to children for countless generations. Learning which plants to avoid is particularly important. Some berries may look inviting. Nature does not always reward curiosity. Near the edge of the woodland, you notice mushrooms pushing through the damp earth. Some are perfectly safe. Others are decidedly not. The difficulty, of course, is telling the difference. It is generally considered poor planning to discover that information after supper. For this reason, most families gather only the mushrooms they know well, leaving the unfamiliar ones to the birds, insects, and anyone who enjoys taking unnecessary risks. The nearby river also provides food throughout much of the year. Simple woven fish traps are placed in shallow water, patiently waiting for eels, trout, or small freshwater fish. At other times, hooks made from iron or bone are used with remarkable patience. Fishing requires time. Fortunately, time is one resource that medieval villagers possess in generous quantities. Clams, mussels, and freshwater shellfish may also be collected where conditions allow, adding welcome variety to meals that might otherwise become rather predictable. As the afternoon shadows begin to lengthen, you return toward the village carrying your modest harvest. A basket of berries. A handful of herbs. Perhaps a few fish. None of it seems especially impressive. Yet together with the grain growing in the fields and the food already stored inside your home, these simple gifts from the land help your family move one day closer to surviving another long English winter. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, the pace of the village gently changes. The hardest work of the day is nearly finished. One by one, families make their way back along the muddy footpaths, carrying baskets, tools, and whatever food the countryside has offered. Your own basket is not overflowing. But it is enough. And in England during the year 900 AD, enough is a comforting word. Inside your home, the fire is coaxed back to life. Dry twigs catch first, followed by thicker logs until cheerful flames once again fill the little house with warmth. A blackened iron pot hangs over the hearth, suspended from a simple hook above the fire. Tonight's supper begins much like yesterday's. A handful of barley. Some oats. A few vegetables gathered from the garden. Perhaps cabbage, leeks, onions, or broad beans. Everything is added to the pot along with fresh water from the village well or nearby stream. The mixture bubbles gently for what feels like an eternity, slowly becoming a thick stew. If the family has managed to preserve a little salted pork or smoked bacon, a small piece is carefully sliced into the pot. Not because there is plenty, but because even a little meat can flavor an entire meal. Nothing is wasted. The cooking fat is saved. Bones are boiled again to make broth. Stale bread is softened in soup rather than thrown away. Even vegetable scraps may find their way to the pigs or chickens waiting patiently outside. Waste is a luxury that no family can afford. As darkness settles beyond the wooden door, everyone gathers around the fire. There are no glowing television screens. No ringing phones. No evening news. Only the quiet crackling of burning wood and the gentle murmur of familiar voices. Someone speaks about tomorrow's work. Someone else mentions a neighbor whose cow has recently calved. An older relative remembers a winter many years ago when snow covered the fields for weeks, and the village survived only because everyone shared what little food remained. The children listen carefully. Stories like these are more than entertainment. They are lessons. Every generation learns that survival depends not only upon hard work, but upon kindness, cooperation, and careful planning. Outside, the wind moves softly through the thatched roofs, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl calls from the edge of the forest. The village grows wonderfully quiet. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise. Another fire to light. Another field to tend. Another meal to earn. There will always be weeds to pull, animals to feed, water to carry, and bread to bake. Life follows the same gentle rhythm day after day, season after season. To modern eyes, such a life may seem difficult. And in many ways, it certainly is. Yet there is also a quiet satisfaction in knowing exactly where your food comes from. Every loaf of bread tells the story of planted seeds, summer sunshine, careful harvesting, grinding grain, and hours beside a warm oven. Every bowl of porridge represents months of patient work. Nothing appears by accident. Everything is connected. As you finish the last spoonful of your simple stew, you feel a pleasant tiredness settling over you. It is the kind of weariness that comes from honest labor beneath an open sky. The fire slowly fades into glowing embers. Your straw mattress waits in the corner of the room. Outside, England sleeps beneath a blanket of stars, while tomorrow's challenges quietly wait beyond the horizon. But those challenges belong to another day. Tonight, your family has food. Your home is warm. And for one more peaceful evening in the year 900 AD. That is more than enough. The morning arrives quietly. A light mist drifts across the fields, softening the edges of fences, trees, and distant cottages. Tiny drops of dew cling to every blade of grass, sparkling for a few brief moments before the rising sun begins to warm the earth. The village is already awake. Smoke curls gently from thatched roofs, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster announces the new day with more confidence than accuracy. You step outside your home, taking a deep breath of the cool morning air. The fields stretch before you like a patchwork blanket, divided into long, narrow strips that belong to different families. From a distance, they appear peaceful, almost effortless. But you know better. Every field is the result of countless hours of labor. Every harvest begins long before the first seed touches the soil. Life in England during the year 900 AD is measured not by calendars hanging on walls, but by the changing seasons. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter each bring their own rhythm, and every family must learn that rhythm by heart. Ignore it, and hunger soon follows. Spring arrives first. After the long, damp winter, the frozen ground slowly begins to soften. Birds return to the hedgerows, streams flow more freely, and the first green shoots cautiously appear across the countryside. For the villagers, however, spring is not a time for relaxing. It is a season of beginning again. Before anything can be planted, the fields must be prepared. Fallen branches are cleared away. Stones are gathered by hand and carried to the edges of the fields. Weeds that survived the winter are pulled from the damp soil before they have the chance to spread. Then comes the plowing. If your village is fortunate, a sturdy ox slowly pulls a heavy wooden plow fitted with a simple iron blade. The animal moves patiently across the field while you guide the plow behind it, gripping the wooden handles with both hands. It is slow work. The plow cuts only one narrow furrow at a time, turning the dark earth upward. Each pass must be made carefully, row after row, until the entire field has been opened for planting. If your family does not own an ox, you may borrow one from a wealthier neighbor or work together with several families. In return, you offer your own labor when their fields need attention. In this village, cooperation is almost as valuable as good weather. As the soil is prepared, sacks of carefully saved seed are brought from storage. Every grain has been protected throughout the winter, and every handful represents hope for the months ahead. You scatter the seed with practiced movements, letting it fall evenly across the freshly turned earth. There are no modern machines calculating perfect spacing. Only experience. Only careful hands. Only faith that enough of the seed will take root. Once the planting is finished, there is little to do except wait. Nature now takes over. Warm sunshine is welcome. Gentle rain is welcome. Too much rain is not. Too little rain is even worse. You quickly learn that farming in the year 900 AD requires a great deal of patience, and perhaps just a little optimism. Every morning, you walk through the fields, watching for tiny green shoots pushing through the soil. Each one is a quiet promise that, with hard work and a bit of good fortune, your family may once again have enough bread to carry them through another year. And so, as spring slowly gives way to the warmth of summer, another farming season has begun. As the weeks pass, the fresh green shoots begin to grow taller. Spring quietly slips away, and England settles into the gentle warmth of summer. The mornings arrive earlier now, with the first birds singing long before the sun climbs above the horizon. By the time the village is fully awake, you have already been working for hours. Summer is the busiest season of all. The crops may be growing, but they cannot simply be left alone. Every day brings another task. You walk slowly through the fields, examining the young barley and oats. At first glance, everything appears healthy. The plants sway softly in the morning breeze, creating gentle waves of green that ripple across the countryside. Then you notice the weeds. They have been growing just as enthusiastically as the crops. Armed with a simple hoe, you begin removing them one by one. It is repetitive work that requires patience more than speed. Every weed left behind steals precious water and nutrients from the grain your family depends upon. The sun climbs higher overhead. Soon, beads of sweat form beneath your wool tunic. Even on warm days, the clothing remains simple and practical. There are no lightweight fabrics designed to keep you cool. You simply work at a steady pace, pausing now and then for a drink of water from a wooden cup. By midday, the fields are alive with activity. Neighbors call to one another across the narrow strips of farmland. An elderly farmer offers advice to a younger man struggling with a broken tool. Children chase noisy crows away from newly planted crops, waving sticks and laughing as the birds reluctantly take flight. The crows, of course, seem entirely convinced that the grain belongs to them. It is an argument that has continued for centuries. Fortunately for the farmers, scarecrows also join the discussion. Simple figures made from old clothing and bundles of straw stand quietly among the fields. They are not especially frightening, especially after the birds realize the mysterious stranger has not moved for several weeks. Still, they sometimes slow the feathered thieves long enough to protect a little more of the harvest. The weather remains everyone's greatest concern. Each morning, you glance toward the sky almost without thinking. Dark clouds may bring welcome rain. Or they may bring fierce storms capable of flattening entire fields in a single afternoon. Too much sunshine dries the soil until deep cracks appear across the earth. Too much rain turns pathways into thick mud and encourages disease among the crops. No one can control the weather. All anyone can do is prepare as well as possible and hope that nature is feeling generous. As summer slowly reaches its height, the fields begin to change color. The bright green stalks gradually become shades of pale gold. The heavy heads of grain bow gently beneath their own weight, dancing softly whenever the wind passes across the countryside. It is one of the most beautiful sights in the village. But it also carries a quiet warning. Harvest time is approaching. Everyone knows what that means. Long days. Aching backs. Blistered hands. And perhaps the most important work of the entire year. For if the harvest is successful, your family will eat through the coming winter. If it fails, winter becomes a far more uncertain visitor. So as the golden fields sway beneath the warm English sun, you take one last peaceful look across the countryside. Soon, every man, woman, and child in the village will work together from sunrise until sunset. The season of gathering is almost here. The first signs of autumn arrive almost unnoticed. The mornings grow cooler. A gentle mist settles over the fields for a little longer each day, and the leaves at the edges of the woodland begin to trade their bright greens for shades of gold and amber. The swallows that filled the summer skies gather on rooftops and fences, preparing for their long journey south. For your village, however, there is little time to admire the changing colors. The harvest has begun. As dawn breaks, families pour into the fields carrying sickles with gently curved iron blades. Each person takes a place among the rows of ripened grain. The work begins quietly, broken only by the soft swish of steel cutting through dry stalks. One handful at a time. One row after another. There are no roaring machines crossing the countryside. No engines. No tractors. Only patient hands moving steadily beneath the autumn sun. You grasp a bundle of barley with one hand and carefully slice through the stems with the other. The grain is laid neatly into small piles before being tied into sheaves using twisted straw. These bundles are then stood upright in groups, allowing the remaining moisture to dry before they are carried to the village. It is careful work. If rain arrives before the grain is safely stored, weeks of effort could be lost. So everyone works with quiet determination. Even children have important jobs. They gather loose stalks left behind after the cutting, carry water to the workers, or help stack the sheaves into neat rows. Older villagers, whose backs may no longer welcome a full day in the fields, mend tools, prepare meals, and watch over the youngest children. Every pair of hands matters. The harvest is not simply a family's responsibility. It belongs to the entire village. As evening approaches, wagons creak slowly along the muddy tracks, carrying precious grain toward the barns. There, the sheaves are stored until they can be threshed. During threshing, the dried stalks are beaten with wooden flails to separate the valuable grains from their husks. The work fills the air with dust. Tiny golden particles drift through the sunlight, while the steady rhythm of wooden flails echoes across the farmyard. After threshing comes winnowing. The grain is tossed gently into the breeze using large wooden trays. The heavier kernels fall back down, while the lighter chaff is carried away by the wind. It is a remarkably simple method. And it has worked for generations. Once the grain is safely stored, a feeling of quiet relief spreads through the village. The barns are fuller. The food stores are stronger. There is hope that the coming winter may be faced with confidence rather than fear. But the farming year is not yet finished. Before long, winter settles over England. The fields become quiet once more. Frost sparkles across the empty ground during the early mornings, and the days grow short. Most farming pauses, but life certainly does not. Fences are repaired, tools are sharpened, firewood is gathered, and animals require daily care. Grain must be carefully measured so that supplies last until spring. Winter is also a season for reflection. As families gather around the warm glow of the hearth, they remember the months that have passed. The spring planting, the long summer days, the demanding harvest, and now the welcome rest that follows. Soon enough, the earth will awaken again. The frost will melt. The birds will return. The fields will once more wait patiently for seed. And you will begin the same ancient rhythm all over again. For the people of England in the year 900 AD, the seasons are more than changes in the weather. They are the heartbeat of life itself. Each season brings its own work. Each season offers its own rewards. The first light of morning slips quietly through the tiny gaps in your wooden shutters. The fire in the center of your home has almost disappeared, leaving only a bed of glowing red embers beneath a blanket of soft gray ash. The room is cool now, carrying the familiar scent of smoke that has settled into the wooden beams over countless seasons. Before anyone thinks about breakfast, there is one important task. The fire must live again. You kneel beside the hearth and gently brush away the ashes with a wooden stick. Beneath them, tiny orange sparks still glow patiently, waiting for fresh fuel. A handful of dry straw is placed on top, followed by small twigs collected the day before. You lean forward and blow gently. Nothing. You try again. A tiny curl of smoke rises into the air. One more careful breath. Suddenly, a small flame appears, dancing across the dry straw. Soon the twigs begin to crackle, and before long, thicker pieces of firewood are added one by one. The house slowly fills with warmth. Keeping a fire alive is far easier than starting a new one from scratch. Although flint and steel can create sparks, making a fresh fire requires patience, dry tinder, and a little good fortune. Because of this, many families try to keep at least a few glowing embers alive day and night, especially during the cold months. The hearth is much more than a place to cook. It is the heart of the home. It provides warmth during winter, light during dark evenings, a place for conversation, And, of course, every meal your family will eat. There is no separate kitchen. No shiny stove. No oven with neatly marked temperatures. No timer cheerfully informing you that dinner is ready. Instead, cooking depends entirely upon experience. You learn to judge heat by the color of the glowing coals. You learn to move a cooking pot closer to the flames for faster boiling, or farther away for a gentle simmer. Every meal requires attention. Hanging above the fire is a sturdy iron pot. For most families, it is one of their most valuable possessions. Iron is expensive, and a well-made cooking pot may serve several generations if cared for properly. Some households cannot afford one at all and instead rely on clay pots that must be handled with great care. Today's breakfast is simple. A handful of oats is poured into the pot with fresh water drawn from the village well. Slowly, the mixture thickens as it cooks over the gentle fire. A little goat's milk is added, making the porridge slightly richer than plain water alone. If your family has been fortunate enough to keep bees, perhaps a spoonful of honey is stirred into the bowl. But only a small spoonful. Honey is precious. As the warm porridge is shared among the family, nobody complains that breakfast is the same as yesterday. Or the day before that. Or perhaps the day before that. In the year 900 AD, variety is a pleasant surprise, not an expectation. The simple meal fills your stomach and provides the strength needed for another long day of work. Outside, the village is beginning to stir. Smoke rises from neighboring homes, carrying the comforting smell of dozens of morning fires into the cool English air. Every household is preparing breakfast in much the same way. Different families. Different stories. But the very same fire. As the morning slowly gives way to afternoon, the fire never truly rests. Even when no meal is being prepared, someone keeps a quiet watch over the hearth. A log is nudged a little closer to the glowing coals. Another piece of wood is added before the flames begin to fade. In a house without central heating, the fire is as dependable as an old friend. Outside, the day's work continues. Some family members return from the fields carrying leeks, onions, or broad beans freshly gathered from the garden. Others bring baskets of herbs growing near the hedgerows. If fortune has been especially kind, perhaps someone has caught a few fish from the nearby stream or gathered eggs from the village hens. Every ingredient is welcomed with quiet gratitude. Nothing is considered ordinary. Nothing is taken for granted. As the afternoon shadows begin to lengthen, preparations for the evening meal quietly begin. The large iron pot is once again suspended above the fire. Unlike many modern recipes, medieval cooking rarely follows exact measurements. There are no written instructions saying to add 1 teaspoon of this or 2 cups of that. Instead, experience guides every decision. A handful of barley goes into the pot. Then another. A few chopped onions. Several leeks sliced into thick rings. Broad beans. Perhaps a cabbage leaf or 2. Everything is covered with fresh water and left to cook slowly over the glowing fire. The stew bubbles gently for hours. The pleasant aroma gradually fills the little house, drifting into every corner beneath the thatched roof. If your family has a small piece of salted pork hanging from the rafters, today might be the day to use a little of it. Only a little. The meat is carefully cut into small pieces, not because anyone wishes to eat sparingly, but because every scrap must last as long as possible. A single piece of salted pork can flavor an entire pot of stew, allowing everyone to enjoy its rich taste without quickly emptying precious food stores. Preserving meat requires patience and careful planning. Without refrigerators or freezers, fresh meat spoils quickly, especially during the warmer months. Salting, smoking, and drying are the most reliable ways to make food last through the winter. Hams may hang for weeks in the smoky air above the hearth. Fish can be salted before being stored in wooden barrels. Even herbs are tied into neat bundles and hung from the roof beams to dry slowly. Every season is spent preparing for the next. Cooking itself demands constant attention. The fire has a personality of its own. Sometimes it burns too fiercely. Sometimes it grows unexpectedly weak. A skilled cook learns to read the flames almost as easily as another person reads a book. If the stew begins boiling too rapidly, the pot is lifted slightly away from the hottest part of the fire. If it cools too much, fresh wood is added beneath it. The meal cannot simply be left alone. It asks for patience, for observation, for experience gathered over many years. As the rich smell of vegetables and herbs drifts through the room, children begin to glance hopefully toward the cooking pot. They know supper is drawing near. Even the family dog waits beside the hearth with remarkable optimism, occasionally looking up as if convinced that tonight, surely tonight, someone will accidentally drop an entire piece of bacon onto the floor. History suggests the dog has been conducting this experiment every evening with unwavering confidence. And history also suggests that, every once in a while, the experiment succeeds. As evening settles over the village, the last of the daylight fades behind the rolling hills. The golden light outside slowly gives way to soft shades of blue and gray, while inside your home the fire becomes the brightest thing in the room. The stew has been simmering for hours. Every so often, someone has stirred it with a long wooden spoon, making sure nothing sticks to the bottom of the pot. The vegetables have softened, the barley has thickened the broth, and the herbs have quietly released their gentle flavors. It is finally time to eat. There are no matching dinner plates waiting in a cupboard. Instead, each family member receives a simple wooden bowl. Some households may own a few pottery dishes, carefully made by a local craftsman, but wooden bowls are lighter, sturdier, and far less likely to shatter if accidentally dropped by tired hands after a long day's work. You fill your bowl with the steaming stew. The aroma is comforting rather than extravagant. Leeks, onions, barley, a hint of smoked pork, fresh herbs gathered from the garden. It is not a feast fit for a king, but it is nourishing. And after a day spent working beneath the open sky, it tastes remarkably satisfying. Beside the stew is a thick loaf of coarse bread, baked several days earlier. The crust is firm, almost stubborn, while the inside remains dense and filling. You tear off a piece and dip it into the warm broth, allowing it to soften before taking a bite. Nothing goes to waste. If any stew remains after supper, it stays in the iron pot. Tomorrow morning, fresh vegetables, or another handful of grain may be added, allowing the meal to continue for another day. In many homes, the cooking pot is almost never completely empty. It simply changes a little with each passing meal, quietly carrying yesterday's supper into tomorrow's. As everyone eats, conversation flows gently around the fire. Someone speaks about the coming harvest. Another wonders whether enough firewood has been gathered for winter. An older neighbor recalls a season when heavy rains delayed the planting, yet the harvest somehow turned out better than anyone expected. Stories pass from one generation to the next as naturally as the food is passed around the table. Children listen carefully, learning not from books but from experience shared aloud. Outside, darkness has now covered the countryside completely. The stars appear one by one, shining with remarkable brightness in a world untouched by electric lights. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a pale ribbon, familiar to every traveler, shepherd, and farmer who has ever walked these fields after sunset. Inside, the fire begins to settle into glowing embers once again. The cooking pot is moved slightly away from the hottest coals. Wooden bowls are wiped clean with the last pieces of bread. Washing every dish with precious water is not always practical, so careful cleaning becomes a skill in itself. The house grows quieter. One by one, family members prepare for another night's rest beneath wool blankets and a sturdy thatched roof. Before lying down, you take one last look at the hearth. The fire has warmed the house, cooked every meal, dried damp clothing, filled the room with light, and gathered the family together at the end of another demanding day. Without it, life in England during the year 900 AD would be unimaginably difficult. With it, even the simplest meal becomes a moment of comfort. As the final flames flicker gently beneath the iron pot, you pull your blanket around your shoulders and listen to the quiet sounds of the village settling into sleep. Tomorrow, before the first light reaches the fields, the embers will be stirred back to life once more. Another pot of porridge will gently bubble over the fire. Another loaf of bread will be shared. Another ordinary day will begin. And in this quiet corner of medieval England, those simple routines are not merely habits. They are the steady rhythm of survival. The village awakens gently beneath another cool English dawn. A thin mist lingers over the fields, softening the outlines of cottages and hedgerows. One by one, wooden doors creak open as families begin another ordinary day in the year 900 AD. Smoke curls upward from thatched roofs, while the familiar sounds of roosters, sheep, and chattering sparrows fill the crisp morning air. Inside your home, the fire has already been stirred back to life. Its warm glow reaches every corner of the small room, where your family sleeps, eats, works, and shares nearly every moment of life together. Unlike modern homes, there are no separate bedrooms, dining rooms, or living rooms. One building serves every purpose. Privacy is a rare luxury. Family, however, is never in short supply. You glance around the room. Grandparents may sleep only a few steps away. Children lie beneath thick wool blankets on straw-filled mattresses, while younger ones remain curled beside their mother for warmth during the cool night. Everyone rises early. Not because they are especially eager to leave a comfortable bed, quite the opposite, but because daylight is too valuable to waste. Every member of the household has work to do. Even the smallest child contributes in some way. The youngest may carry kindling for the fire or gather eggs from beneath the hens. Slightly older children fetch water from the village well, scare hungry birds away from the crops, or help watch over younger brothers and sisters while the adults work in the fields. Childhood in 900 AD is very different from the one you may know. There are no classrooms filled with desks. No school buses arriving each morning. No backpacks stuffed with notebooks and pencils. Instead, children learn by watching. They follow their parents through each season, quietly observing how bread is baked, sheep are cared for, fields are planted, and tools are repaired. Lessons are not separated from daily life. Daily life is the lesson. A young boy may spend the morning following his father, learning how to sharpen an iron blade or guide an ox across a field. A young girl may watch her mother knead bread, spin wool into thread, or carefully tend the family garden. Of course, these roles are not perfectly rigid in every household. When survival depends on everyone's effort, people often help wherever they are needed. Skills matter more than titles. Knowledge passes from one generation to the next without books or written instructions. Grandparents become living libraries. They remember which herbs soothe a cough, which fields drain well after heavy rain, which winter was the harshest, and which mistakes should never be repeated. Their stories carry more than entertainment. They carry experience. As breakfast of warm barley porridge is shared around the hearth, conversation is quiet but comforting. Plans for the day's work are discussed. Someone reminds another to mend a broken fence before the sheep discover it first. An elderly grandmother gently laughs, saying the sheep have always believed fences are merely polite suggestions. Looking at one particularly determined ram outside. She may have a point. The meal is simple, but the feeling it creates is rich. The family begins another day together, not with hurry or distraction, but with shared purpose. And in the England of 900 AD, that shared purpose is one of the strongest foundations any household can have. As the morning hours quietly pass, the village settles into its familiar rhythm. Adults head toward the fields, workshops, or nearby woodland, while children accompany them whenever they are old enough. There is no expectation that a child will spend the entire day playing, although moments of play certainly find their way into everyday life. Work and play often happen side by side. A young boy carrying a bundle of firewood may suddenly stop to watch a butterfly drift across the path. Two sisters gathering herbs might challenge each other to find the brightest wildflower before returning to their task. Even during busy days, childhood has a gentle way of making room for wonder. Most lessons are taught through quiet example rather than formal instruction. Your father rarely gives long speeches about responsibility. Instead, he hands you a small wooden tool and patiently shows you how to repair a broken fence post. At first, your hands feel awkward and uncertain. The knots refuse to tighten properly, and the rope seems determined to twist itself into impossible shapes. He simply smiles. Then he unties the knot and lets you try again. Learning takes time. Mistakes are expected. Every skilled farmer, carpenter, shepherd, or blacksmith once struggled with the very same tasks. Your mother teaches with the same quiet patience. As she prepares bread, she explains how the dough should feel beneath your fingers. Too dry, and the loaf becomes hard. Too wet, and it loses its shape. She does not measure ingredients with scales or cups. She measures with experience. You begin to understand that wisdom is not always written down. Sometimes it lives in practiced hands. Grandparents remain an important part of family life. Although they may no longer have the strength for long days in the fields, they continue to contribute in countless ways. They mend clothing beside the fire, tell stories while spinning wool, watch over young children, and offer advice gathered over many decades. In the evenings, their stories become treasures. They speak of unusually harsh winters when snow covered the village for weeks. They remember years of abundant harvests, joyful weddings, and the occasional mischievous goat that somehow found its way inside the church. The details may become slightly more impressive with each telling. That, perhaps, is another ancient tradition. Children listen carefully, sometimes asking thoughtful questions, sometimes simply gazing into the dancing flames of the hearth. Without books in every home, these stories preserve the village's memory. They teach courage during difficult seasons, patience during uncertain times, kindness toward neighbors, and gratitude for simple blessings. By the time the afternoon sun begins its slow journey toward the western hills, you realize that raising children in the year 900 AD is not centered on expensive toys or elaborate lessons. It is built upon something quieter. Shared work. Shared meals. Shared stories. And the steady belief that each generation will help the next find its place in the world. As the afternoon slowly fades into evening, the pace of the village begins to soften. The fields grow quieter as families gather their tools and make their way home along the well-worn paths. The day's work is finished, at least until tomorrow's sunrise. Sheep are guided into their pens, chickens settle onto their perches, and the last rays of sunlight paint the thatched roofs with a warm golden glow. Children return with the adults, their faces flushed from a day spent outdoors. Their hands may be dirty from helping in the garden or carrying bundles of sticks, but their eyes remain bright with curiosity. Even after hours of small tasks, they still find the energy to chase one another between the cottages, laughing as they weave around water buckets and curious chickens. For a few precious moments, work gives way to play. A simple stick becomes a wooden sword. Smooth stones become game pieces. A circle drawn in the dirt becomes the setting for a friendly competition. No one owns shelves filled with toys, yet imagination quietly fills the spaces where expensive possessions do not exist. The adults watch with gentle smiles. They know these carefree moments are important. Soon enough, today's children will become tomorrow's farmers, shepherds, craftspeople, and parents. But for now, they are simply children. As darkness slowly settles across the countryside, families gather once again around the familiar warmth of the hearth. Supper is shared from wooden bowls, and the conversation drifts easily from one topic to another. Someone speaks about the weather forecast, not from a written report, but from the shape of the clouds and the direction of the wind. Someone else wonders whether the barley harvest might begin a little earlier this year. An elderly grandfather quietly recalls his own childhood, smiling as he describes chasing geese that seemed determined to wander into every neighbor's garden. According to him, the geese usually won. The children laugh. Whether the story has become slightly more dramatic over the years is impossible to know. Perhaps that is simply how family stories grow. After the meal, younger children grow sleepy. A mother gently hums a familiar tune while rocking a baby close to the warmth of the fire. The melody has no written music. It has been passed from one generation to the next for longer than anyone can remember. Outside, the stars begin to appear one by one in the clear night sky. Without the glow of modern cities, the heavens shine with remarkable brilliance. The moon casts a pale silver light across the quiet fields, while the soft chirping of crickets fills the cool evening air. Inside the cottage, the fire slowly settles into glowing embers. Blankets are spread across straw-filled mattresses. Parents make certain that every child is warm before settling down themselves. Life in England during the year 900 AD is not an easy one. Illness is always a possibility. Harvests sometimes fail. Winters can be long and unforgiving. Yet within these small timber homes, families find strength in one another. Children grow surrounded by familiar voices, patient teachers, hard-working hands, and the comforting knowledge that they are never facing life's challenges alone. In a world without modern conveniences, the greatest wealth is not measured in silver coins or fine clothing. It is measured in loving parents who patiently teach. Wise grandparents who generously remember. Kind neighbors who willingly help. And children who carry those lessons into the next generation. As you close your eyes beside the fading fire, the quiet sounds of your family breathing peacefully nearby fill the little cottage with comfort. Tomorrow will bring new work, new lessons, and new stories. But tonight, beneath a sturdy thatched roof in the England of 900 AD, you drift gently toward sleep, surrounded by the people who make even the simplest home feel rich beyond measure. The morning arrives with a quiet blanket of fog. The fields that only yesterday seemed so familiar have nearly disappeared beneath a soft gray mist. Dew clings to the grass, and the village awakens more slowly than usual. Even the rooster sounds slightly less enthusiastic this morning, as though he too would prefer another hour beneath a warm feathered blanket. You step outside your cottage and pull your wool cloak a little tighter around your shoulders. The cool air carries the scent of damp earth, wood smoke, and fresh rain. Normally, these smells are comforting. Today, something feels different. As you pass one of the neighboring cottages, you notice that its wooden door remains closed long after sunrise. No smoke rises from the roof. The family has not yet come outside to feed their chickens. A neighbor quietly explains that someone inside has fallen ill. In England during the year 900 AD, sickness is a familiar visitor. Unlike modern times, there are no hospitals nearby, no pharmacies filled with neatly labeled medicines, and certainly no doctors arriving within minutes after a telephone call. Instead, families rely upon experience, traditional knowledge, and hope. Illness touches every village. A simple cough may disappear after several days. Or it may quietly become something far more serious. No one can know for certain. The uncertainty itself is often the most frightening part. As you continue your morning walk, you pass the village herb garden. It is not large, but it is carefully tended throughout the year. Small patches of sage, mint, thyme, yarrow, fennel, and other useful plants grow side by side. To modern eyes, they may appear to be ordinary herbs. To the villagers, they are something much greater. They are medicine. Knowledge of these plants has been passed from one generation to another for countless years. Grandmothers remember which leaves may soothe a sore throat. Village healers know which herbs are brewed into teas to ease stomach pains. Midwives understand which plants may bring comfort during childbirth, though not every remedy is effective, and some may even carry risks that people of the time do not yet understand. Experience is their greatest teacher. Science, as you know it today, has not yet arrived. When someone develops a fever, warm herbal drinks are often prepared beside the hearth. Mint may help calm an unsettled stomach. Honey is sometimes mixed into warm water to soothe a painful throat. Clean cloths soaked in cool water are gently placed upon a warm forehead. These remedies cannot cure every illness, but they offer comfort. And sometimes, comfort is one of the most valuable gifts a family can provide. As you gently rub fragrant herbs between your fingers, their familiar scent rises into the cool morning air. In a world where medicine is limited, nature remains the village's oldest pharmacy. And every leaf carries a quiet hope. As the day slowly unfolds, news of illness spreads quietly through the village. There are no newspapers, no messages carried instantly across great distances, and certainly no glowing screens announcing the latest updates. Instead, information travels from neighbor to neighbor in gentle conversations beside wells, along muddy footpaths, or while tending the fields. People speak softly. Not because illness is unusual, but because everyone understands that one family's hardship could easily become another's tomorrow. When someone becomes too weak to work, the entire household feels the burden. Fields still need tending. Animals still require feeding. Firewood must still be gathered before nightfall. In these moments, neighbors often lend a helping hand. One family may milk the sick farmer's cow. Another may harvest vegetables from the garden. Someone else leaves a loaf of bread or a pot of warm stew outside the cottage door. Acts of kindness are as important as any herbal remedy. A village survives because its people care for one another. Inside the cottage, the atmosphere is calm but serious. The patient rests beneath thick wool blankets near the warmth of the hearth. The fire burns steadily, keeping the room comfortable while a family member quietly watches nearby. A wooden cup filled with warm herbal tea sits within easy reach. From time to time, a caring hand gently touches the patient's forehead, checking whether the fever has begun to ease. Sometimes it has. Sometimes it has not. Waiting becomes part of the treatment. The village healer may arrive carrying a small leather pouch filled with dried herbs gathered throughout the changing seasons. Some have been collected from nearby forests, others from open meadows or carefully tended gardens. Each plant has its own purpose, according to the wisdom passed down through generations. Yarrow may be placed upon small cuts to help stop bleeding. Plantain leaves are sometimes wrapped around scratches or insect bites. Willow bark is occasionally prepared as a bitter drink to ease aches and fevers. Though the villagers do not know it, willow contains natural compounds related to the ingredient that would one day inspire modern aspirin. Nature has been quietly helping people for thousands of years. Not every remedy succeeds. Some traditions are based on careful observation. Others are rooted in belief rather than evidence. A charm may be spoken softly over an illness. A simple wooden cross may be placed beside the bed. Prayers are offered with sincere hope. Faith provides comfort even when answers remain uncertain. The village priest is often called to visit those who are seriously ill. He offers prayers, words of encouragement, and gentle reassurance to both the patient and the family gathered around the bedside. In difficult times, spiritual comfort becomes every bit as valuable as physical care. As afternoon light filters softly through the tiny openings in the cottage walls, the room remains peaceful. The fire crackles quietly. A kettle simmers. Family members speak in hushed voices. No one can force the body to heal. They can only offer warmth, rest, kindness, and hope that tomorrow's sunrise will bring a little more strength than today's. In the England of 900 AD, those simple gifts are often the greatest medicine of all. As evening slowly settles across the village, the day's work comes to a gentle end. The fields grow quiet beneath the fading light, and a cool breeze carries the scent of damp grass through the narrow lanes between the cottages. One by one, families return home, grateful for another day completed. Yet in one small cottage, the rhythm of the evening is different. The family gathers not around cheerful conversation, but around the bedside of someone still recovering. The fire burns steadily in the hearth, filling the room with its familiar warmth. A small pot of herbal tea rests nearby, its gentle fragrance of mint and thyme drifting through the smoky air. There is little more to be done. The remedies have been prepared. The blankets have been tucked carefully around the patient. The prayers have been quietly spoken. Now, everyone waits. Waiting is one of the hardest parts of illness. It asks for patience when there are few answers. Outside, life continues much as it always has. Chickens settle onto their roosts. Sheep huddle together inside their pens. An owl begins its nightly hunt along the edge of the woodland. Nature rarely pauses, even when people must. As darkness deepens, the village priest quietly visits once more. He offers gentle words of comfort, reminding the family that no one faces hardship entirely alone. Whether through faith, friendship, or simple acts of kindness, the village stands together during difficult times. A neighbor arrives carrying a fresh loaf of coarse barley bread. Another brings a small basket of onions and dried beans. Someone else quietly leaves extra firewood beside the door before disappearing into the night without expecting thanks. No one keeps score. One season you help your neighbors. Another season they help you. That is simply how village life survives. Not every illness ends happily. A harsh winter, an infected wound, or a fever can claim lives that modern medicine would likely save. Childbirth is especially dangerous, both for mothers and their babies. Even a small cut earned while chopping wood or repairing a fence can become serious if it becomes infected. The people of 900 AD understand these dangers well, even if they do not fully understand their causes. They respond with courage rather than certainty. Each morning they rise again. They tend their fields. care for their families, and continue living with remarkable resilience. Fortunately, many illnesses do pass. After several days of rest, warm meals, clean water, and careful attention, strength slowly begins to return. A fever breaks during the night. A cough becomes less frequent. The patient asks for a little more bread, then manages to sit beside the fire for the first time in many days. These small victories are quietly celebrated. No bells ring through the village. No grand feast is prepared. A simple smile from a worried mother. A relieved sigh from an elderly grandfather. A child laughing because a parent is finally well enough to tell another bedtime story. Those are celebrations enough. As the fire settles into glowing embers, you think about how different this world is from your own. Today, a visit to a doctor, a course of antibiotics, or a simple vaccination can prevent or treat illnesses that once brought great fear. The people of medieval England had none of these advantages. Yet they possessed something equally important. They cared deeply for one another. Knowledge was shared freely. Neighbors offered help without hesitation. Families remained close through both joyful and difficult times. Those quiet acts of compassion could not cure every sickness. But they made suffering a little lighter. And sometimes, that was enough to help someone find the strength to greet another sunrise. The cottage grows peaceful. The last flames fade into soft orange embers. Outside, the stars shine brightly above the sleeping village, just as they have for countless generations. Tomorrow will bring new work, new challenges, and, with good fortune, renewed health. For now, wrapped in the warmth of the hearth and surrounded by those who care for you, you close your eyes. In the England of 900 AD, hope is not found in grand miracles. It is found in a warm fire, a healing cup of herbs, the gentle hands of family, and the quiet promise that, together, another day can be faced. The first light of Sunday arrives gently across the English countryside. A thin layer of morning mist settles over the fields, softening the outlines of cottages and ancient oak trees. The village feels quieter than usual. There is still work to be done, animals must always be fed, and the fire still needs tending, but today moves at a slower pace. For many people living in England during the year 900 AD, this is a day to gather. Not in the marketplace. Not for a festival. But for worship. You step outside your cottage, adjusting your simple wool cloak against the cool morning air. Around you, neighbors emerge from their homes, greeting one another with quiet smiles. Children walk beside their parents, trying their best to stay out of the muddy puddles, although with only moderate success. Some things, it seems, never change. The church stands on a small rise overlooking the village. It is not the towering stone cathedral you might imagine from later centuries. Instead, it is a modest building made from timber or rough local stone, depending upon the wealth of the community. Its roof is covered with thatch, much like the surrounding cottages, and a simple wooden cross marks its place. To modern eyes, it appears humble. To the villagers, it is one of the most important places they know. The church is far more than a building. It is the heart of the community. Here, people pray together. Celebrate marriages. welcome newborn children through baptism, and say farewell to loved ones who have reached the end of life's journey. Almost every important moment passes through its doors. As you approach, you hear the soft ringing of a handbell. There are no great church towers filled with enormous bells in most villages yet. Instead, the priest or one of his helpers rings a smaller bell, calling everyone to gather. Its sound carries gently across the quiet fields. Inside, the church is simple. Wooden benches are few, and many people stand throughout the service. The walls are plain, though perhaps decorated with a painted wooden cross or simple carvings made by local craftsmen. Sunlight slips through small openings, filling the room with soft golden beams that catch tiny specks of dust floating in the still air. The smell is familiar. Beeswax candles, fresh wood, cool stone, and the faint scent of smoke carried in on everyone's wool clothing. The priest begins the service. Much of it is spoken in Latin, the language of the church. Most villagers do not understand every word. Yet they know the rhythm, the prayers, the songs, the familiar moments that have become part of village life since childhood. Faith is not only something they hear. It is something they live. In a world where storms can destroy crops, illness can arrive without warning, and winters often test every family's strength, belief offers comfort that cannot be measured. It reminds people that they are part of something greater than themselves. And on quiet mornings like this one, beneath the thatched roof of a small English church, that feeling is enough to bring peace to many hearts. As the service comes to a gentle close, the villagers do not hurry home. There is no rush to beat traffic. No buzzing phones waiting in their pockets. Instead, people linger outside the little church, standing in small groups beneath the open sky. The morning mist has almost disappeared now, replaced by soft sunshine that warms the cool autumn air. Neighbors exchange quiet greetings. One family asks about another's harvest. An elderly couple admire a neighbor's healthy new calf. Children, who have done their very best to stand quietly during the service, suddenly rediscover the wonderful skill of running in circles around the churchyard. Their parents gently remind them not to race too close to the graves. The reminder is repeated every Sunday. It is only moderately successful. For the people of 900 AD, faith is not something that exists only inside the church building. It follows them home. It shapes the rhythm of ordinary life. Before sharing a meal, many families pause for a simple prayer of thanks. At sunrise, a farmer may quietly ask for fair weather before walking into the fields. As evening falls, parents teach their children familiar prayers before everyone settles beneath their wool blankets. These small moments become part of daily routine. Not dramatic. Not complicated. Simply comforting. The changing seasons also carry religious meaning. Spring reminds people of renewal and hope. Summer speaks of God's generosity through growing crops. Autumn becomes a season of gratitude as grain fills the barns. Winter encourages patience while everyone waits for warmth and light to return. Nature and faith seem closely woven together. One helps explain the other. Of course, the world still feels mysterious. Many natural events remain difficult to understand. A violent thunderstorm, an unexpected eclipse, or a long period of drought can leave the village searching for answers. Without modern science to explain every event, people often understand the world through both observation and belief. Some older traditions remain alongside Christianity. An elderly woman may quietly leave a small offering of bread beside an ancient tree, following customs remembered from generations long before. Another villager may carry a carved wooden charm while traveling through a dark forest, believing it offers protection from unseen dangers. These older beliefs do not disappear overnight. Instead, they blend gradually with newer Christian traditions. The village priest may gently discourage some customs while accepting others that bring no harm. Change comes slowly, just as it often does throughout history. Religious festivals provide welcome moments of celebration during the year. Christmas brings joyful gatherings during the darkest weeks of winter. Easter arrives with the promise of new life after the long cold months. Other feast days allow families to pause from their endless work, share food with neighbors, and enjoy music, storytelling, and simple celebrations. For children especially, these occasions are eagerly anticipated. Any day that includes extra bread, cheerful songs, and perhaps a little honey is remembered with great affection. As the afternoon sunlight stretches across the village, you begin the walk home along the familiar dirt path. The church grows smaller behind you. Yet its quiet influence remains. Not only in the prayers spoken that morning, but in the kindness shown between neighbors. The hope carried through difficult seasons. And the steady belief that no one walks through life entirely alone. In the England of 900 AD, those quiet convictions helped guide ordinary people through extraordinary challenges, one peaceful day at a time. As the afternoon slowly fades into evening, the village settles once again into its familiar rhythm. The animals have been fed. The last bundles of firewood have been stacked beside the cottages. Thin streams of smoke rise gently from the thatched roofs, drifting into the cool evening sky. The church now stands quietly at the edge of the village, its simple wooden cross outlined against the setting sun. Its doors are closed. Its work, however, is never finished. Faith remains present long after the prayers have ended. Inside your cottage, the fire crackles softly in the hearth. The warm light dances across the rough timber walls as your family gathers for the evening meal. Before anyone reaches for a wooden bowl, there is a brief moment of silence. Your father bows his head. In a calm voice, he offers thanks for the day's blessings. For the grain that filled the fields. For the roof that kept out the rain. For the neighbors who had shared both work and friendship. And for the hope of another sunrise. The prayer lasts only a few moments. Yet it reminds everyone around the fire that even ordinary days are precious. As supper comes to an end, the conversation turns to stories. Not every story comes from the Bible. Some have been passed from grandparents to grandchildren for longer than anyone can remember. There are tales of ancient saints who traveled across England carrying little more than faith and determination. Stories of humble shepherds whose kindness was rewarded in unexpected ways. And quiet legends of lonely forests, hidden springs, and mysterious lights seen on foggy evenings. Some stories are meant to teach wisdom. Others simply remind children not to wander too far into the woods after dark. To be fair, getting lost in a medieval forest is an excellent way to ruin an otherwise peaceful afternoon. So perhaps those stories serve a practical purpose as well. As the youngest children grow sleepy, their mother gently wraps another wool blanket around their shoulders. Before climbing into bed, each child quietly repeats the familiar evening prayers they have learned by listening to their parents night after night. No books are needed. The words live in memory. Just as songs do. Just as family traditions do. Outside, darkness settles over the countryside. The stars appear one by one above the village, shining with extraordinary brilliance in a world untouched by electric light. The moon casts a soft silver glow across the fields, while an owl calls from the distant woodland. It is easy to understand why people living in the year 900 AD feel surrounded by mystery. The world is vast. The nights are dark. Many questions remain unanswered. Faith helps fill those quiet spaces. Not by explaining everything, but by offering comfort when explanations cannot be found. It teaches patience during difficult winters. Gratitude after a successful harvest. Compassion toward neighbors in times of illness. And hope when tomorrow feels uncertain. These beliefs shape the village in ways both large and small. They encourage families to care for one another. To forgive disagreements before they grow too large. To celebrate together in times of joy. And to stand beside one another during seasons of sorrow. In many ways, the strength of the village does not come from its wooden fences or sturdy cottages. It comes from the trust shared between its people. As the fire slowly fades into glowing embers, the cottage grows wonderfully quiet. You pull your wool blanket a little closer and listen to the gentle sounds around you, the soft breathing of your family, the occasional crackle of the dying fire, and the distant whisper of the evening wind moving through the trees. Tomorrow, the work of the fields will begin again. The animals will need feeding. Bread will need baking. Children will learn new lessons. The morning begins as so many others have. A pale sunrise slowly lifts above the rolling hills of England, painting the fields in soft shades of gold. The village awakens to familiar sounds, the crowing of a rooster, the lowing of cattle, and the gentle crackle of fires being stirred back to life. At first glance, everything feels peaceful. Children carry buckets toward the well. Farmers shoulder their tools. A shepherd guides his flock toward open pasture. It is an ordinary morning. Yet beneath that ordinary routine lies a quiet feeling that has become part of daily life. Uncertainty. In the year 900 AD, England is a land of hard-working villages, fertile fields, and growing kingdoms. But it is also a land that has spent generations living with the possibility of unexpected visitors arriving from across the sea. The Vikings. For many people today, the word Viking brings to mind fierce warriors wearing horned helmets. The helmets, however, are almost certainly a myth. Real Viking warriors wore practical helmets, and many wore no helmet at all. History is often less dramatic than popular imagination. Yet the fear they inspired was very real. No one in your village wakes each morning expecting a raid. If they did, ordinary life could never continue. Instead, people wake, bake bread, tend animals, repair fences, and plant crops exactly as they always have. Life must go on. Still, every traveler arriving from another village brings news. Sometimes it is cheerful. A successful harvest. A wedding. The birth of a healthy child. Other times, the news is quieter. A monastery farther down the coast has been attacked. A trading settlement has been abandoned. A group of strangers was seen sailing along a nearby river. The conversations become softer when such stories are told. No one knows whether the danger is close or many days away. England's rivers are both a blessing and a concern. They carry fish, provide fresh water, and allow merchants to travel between communities. But they also offer easy routes inland for longships. The famous Viking ships are remarkable pieces of craftsmanship. Built from overlapping wooden planks, they are light enough to travel swiftly across the sea and shallow enough to move along rivers that larger vessels cannot reach. To villagers living near the coast or beside navigable rivers, this knowledge is impossible to ignore. As you work in the fields, you occasionally glance toward the distant river. Not because you expect to see anything. Simply because generations before you have done exactly the same. Most days, the river remains peaceful. A fisherman checks his nets. Water birds skim across the surface. The current flows quietly toward the sea. And that is exactly how everyone hopes it will remain. The village itself has few defenses. There are no towering stone walls surrounding your home. No permanent army standing watch nearby. Some settlements may have simple earthworks or wooden palisades, but many rely upon distance, good fortune, and the hope that they are too small to attract unwanted attention. Life continues because it must. The barley still needs harvesting. The sheep still wander through the fields with cheerful determination. Children still laugh while chasing one another between the cottages. Even in uncertain times, ordinary moments continue to fill the day. Perhaps that is one of history's quietest lessons. People do not stop living simply because danger exists somewhere beyond the horizon. They continue planting gardens, sharing meals, raising children, and hoping that tomorrow will look much like today. For now, the morning remains peaceful. The breeze carries only the scent of fresh grass and wood smoke. And somewhere beyond the distant hills, unseen by the little village, history quietly continues its slow and steady march. As the sun climbs higher into the sky, the village settles into another day of steady work. The fields are alive with quiet activity. Farmers bend over rows of barley, pulling stubborn weeds from the soil. Women gather vegetables from small gardens beside their cottages. Children carry bundles of kindling that seem almost too large for their small arms, determined to prove they are growing stronger with every passing season. At first glance, it is impossible to imagine that fear has any place here. Yet it lingers quietly, like a distant storm cloud resting beyond the horizon. It is not the kind of fear that causes panic every day. Instead, it becomes part of life. A feeling that the peaceful routine you enjoy today is something precious, because no one knows exactly what tomorrow may bring. From time to time, travelers arrive along the muddy roads connecting one village to another. A merchant leading a small pack horse. A monk carrying letters between monasteries. A farmer visiting relatives several miles away. These visitors bring more than goods. They bring news. Sometimes they speak of prosperous markets and healthy harvests. Other times, they quietly describe villages farther east that have seen unfamiliar ships along the coast. The stories are never exactly the same. One traveler insists there were only a handful of warriors. Another claims there were dozens. A third admits he heard the tale from someone who heard it from someone else. Like many stories passed from village to village, the details sometimes grow larger with every retelling. Even so, people listen carefully. Because somewhere beneath the exaggeration often lies a grain of truth. The king's messengers occasionally passed through larger settlements, carrying orders and news across the kingdom. In these years, rulers such as Alfred the Great and, later, his son Edward the Elder worked to strengthen England's defences against Viking attacks. New fortified towns, known as buzz, were built in many regions, giving nearby communities places of refuge during times of danger. Your own village may not have such strong walls nearby. But knowing they exist brings a small measure of reassurance. If trouble should ever come, there is at least somewhere to seek safety. Fortunately, most days pass without incident. The greatest challenge is still the weather. Or a stubborn ox that refuses to cooperate. Or a fence that somehow develops another hole exactly where the sheep have decided to investigate. The sheep, naturally, remain convinced that every field looks greener on the other side. Some traditions appear to be timeless. As evening approaches, families return home with their tools resting across tired shoulders. The conversations around the hearth often include practical preparations. Where would everyone gather if danger were reported? Which valuables should be carried first? Who would help the elderly or the youngest children? These discussions are calm rather than frightened. Preparation brings comfort. Knowing what to do helps replace panic with purpose. Children listen quietly. To them, these conversations are simply another part of growing up, much like learning to bake bread or tend the family garden. They hope they will never need such knowledge. So do their parents. Outside, the evening breeze moves gently through the tall grass, carrying only the songs of birds returning to their nests. No longships appear on the river today. No warning horn echoes across the countryside. Only peace. And in a world where peace cannot always be taken for granted, that ordinary, uneventful evening feels like a gift. As another day draws to a close, the village grows wonderfully quiet. The last rays of sunlight slip behind the distant hills, leaving the fields bathed in soft shades of amber and violet. Smoke rises lazily from the cottages as evening meals simmer over open hearths. The familiar scent of barley stew and freshly baked bread drifts through the cool air, mingling with the fragrance of damp earth after a long day's work. For tonight, there is no cause for alarm. The children laugh as they chase one another between the cottages before their parents call them inside. A shepherd counts his flock one final time, quietly relieved that every sheep has returned safely. A blacksmith places his tools aside, satisfied with another day's labor. Life continues. Just as it did yesterday. Just as everyone hopes it will tomorrow. Yet before the heavy wooden door is closed for the night, you find yourself looking toward the western sky. Not searching for enemies. Simply wondering what tomorrow might bring. That quiet uncertainty has become part of life. No one can predict when travelers will arrive with news from distant towns. No one knows whether the coming months will bring peaceful harvests or troubling rumors carried along the roads and rivers. The people of England have learned something important. Fear cannot be allowed to rule every day. If it did, the fields would never be planted. The bread would never be baked. The children would never laugh. So they choose something else. They choose to keep living. Inside the cottage, your family gathers around the warm glow of the hearth. The flames dance gently beneath the black iron cooking pot while supper is shared from simple wooden bowls. Conversation turns to familiar subjects, the condition of the barley, the weather expected tomorrow, and whether the roof will need fresh thatch before winter arrives. Ordinary conversations. Ordinary concerns. Perhaps that is the greatest act of courage. To continue building a home, raising a family, and planning for the future, even when the future cannot be known. As darkness settles across the countryside, the stars begin to appear above the sleeping village. Without lamps or city lights to dim their brilliance, they fill the heavens in astonishing numbers. The broad band of the Milky Way stretches from one horizon to the other, a familiar sight for generations who have looked upward after long days in the fields. Somewhere far away, beyond those distant hills and beyond the coastline, Viking ships may indeed be sailing across the sea. Their crews are living lives of their own, rowing through cold waters, trading in busy ports, farming their own lands, and, at times, joining raids that have become part of history's memory. Like the people of England, they are not all the same. Some are traders. Some are settlers. Some are craftsmen. Some are warriors. History is rarely as simple as stories make it seem. For the ordinary villager, however, such distinctions matter less than the hope that tomorrow will remain peaceful. Before climbing onto your straw mattress, you place another piece of wood onto the fire. It catches slowly, filling the room with gentle warmth that pushes back the cool night air. The familiar sounds of your family settling down surround you, the quiet rustle of wool blankets, the soft whisper of tired voices, and the steady breathing of those already asleep. Outside, an owl calls from the edge of the forest. A gentle breeze moves through the thatched roofs. The village rests beneath a sky filled with countless stars. Tomorrow, the rooster will crow once more. The fire will be stirred back to life. The fields will again call for patient hands. And regardless of what news may someday arrive from distant shores, ordinary people will continue doing what they have always done. They will care for their families, help their neighbors, harvest their crops, share their bread, and greet each sunrise with quiet determination. Because in the England of 900 AD, courage is rarely found in grand battles or heroic speeches. More often, it is found in ordinary people choosing hope over fear, one peaceful day at a time. The village wakes before the sun. Long before the sky turns bright, a faint orange glow begins to flicker behind the wooden shutters of the cottages. One by one, fires are stirred back to life, sending thin ribbons of smoke curling into the cool morning air. Another day of work is about to begin. In England during the year 900 AD, almost everyone has something useful to do. There is no retirement from the changing seasons. No weekend waiting at the end of the week. Life follows the rhythm of sunrise and sunset, and every pair of hands has a purpose. As you step outside, the village is already coming alive. A farmer leads his ox toward the fields, speaking softly as the great animal plods patiently beside him. Nearby, a shepherd opens a wooden gate, allowing a flock of sheep to wander toward fresh pasture. Chickens scratch eagerly at the damp earth, convinced that breakfast is hiding just beneath the next patch of grass. They seem remarkably optimistic every morning. Perhaps optimism is one of the oldest farming traditions. Not everyone in the village spends the day growing crops. Although farming provides most families with food, every community also depends upon skilled craftspeople whose work keeps daily life moving smoothly. You hear the familiar ringing of a hammer striking iron. The village blacksmith has already begun his day. His workshop stands near the center of the settlement, where the sound of metal echoing against metal has become as familiar as birdsong. Inside, a charcoal fire burns fiercely in the forge, glowing bright orange beneath a bed of black coals. Using a pair of heavy iron tongs, the blacksmith removes a piece of heated metal from the fire. It glows almost like the rising sun. With calm, practiced movements, he places it upon the anvil and shapes it with steady blows from his hammer. Each strike sends tiny sparks dancing through the air. The blacksmith's work is demanding. He makes nails for new cottages, iron knives for kitchens, horseshoes for travelers, axes for woodcutters, and sturdy plow blades that help farmers prepare the fields each spring. Without his skill, many ordinary tasks would become far more difficult. Across the village, another craftsman is already at work. The carpenter carefully measures rough pieces of oak before shaping them with an adze and a handsaw. He repairs broken doors, builds sturdy tables, fashions wooden buckets, and constructs the carts that carry grain home during harvest. Almost everything around you has passed through someone's careful hands. Nothing arrives from a distant factory. Nothing appears overnight. Every object has a maker. Every tool has a story. As the sun slowly climbs above the rooftops, the village settles into its steady rhythm. The ringing of the blacksmith's hammer. The scraping of the carpenter's plane. The cheerful clucking of hens. The quiet conversations of neighbors beginning another ordinary day. Together, these familiar sounds create the peaceful heartbeat of village life. And in this small corner of England, during the year 900 AD, honest work is not merely a way to earn a living. It is the thread that quietly holds the entire community together. As the morning slowly gives way to afternoon, the village continues its quiet rhythm of work. The sun hangs a little higher now, warming the thatched roofs and the narrow dirt paths that wind between the cottages. Everywhere you look, someone is busy. No one rushes. Yet very little stands still. Near the edge of the village, a woman sits beside her doorway with a bundle of freshly washed sheep's wool resting in her lap. Before the wool can become warm clothing, it must first be cleaned, teased apart, and spun into long strands of thread. In her hands is a simple drop spindle. With a gentle twist of her fingers, the spindle begins to spin, pulling soft fibers into a surprisingly strong thread. The movement is slow and graceful, repeated hundreds of times throughout the day. It requires patience more than strength. Nearby, another woman works at a small upright loom, carefully weaving the spun wool into sturdy cloth. Thread passes over and under, until a warm piece of fabric slowly begins to appear. There are no factories producing rolls of cloth. Every blanket, every tunic, every cloak has begun with the careful work of someone's hands. Even making a single shirt may take many days. Clothing is valuable, and nothing is wasted. When a sleeve tears, it is patched. When a cloak grows thin, it is mended again. Even worn-out scraps may become cleaning cloths or stuffing for cushions. The idea of throwing away perfectly useful fabric would seem very strange indeed. A little farther along the lane, the village potter shapes damp clay upon a simple wheel. His hands move steadily, guiding the spinning clay into bowls, cups, and storage jars. The soft earth slowly rises beneath his fingers. A slight touch changes the shape. Too much pressure, and the pot collapses. Too little, and the walls become uneven. Years of practice have taught him exactly how the clay wishes to move. Once finished, the pots will dry before being fired in a hot kiln, becoming strong enough to serve families for many years. As you continue your walk, the pleasant smell of fresh bread drifts from another cottage. The village baker has been awake since long before dawn. Large loaves of rye and barley bread cool upon wooden boards while neighbors stop by to collect the bread they brought to be baked. Many homes have no oven of their own, so a shared bakehouse becomes an important part of village life. Fresh bread is always welcome, especially after a morning spent working beneath the open sky. Throughout the afternoon, neighbors help one another without being asked. A broken cartwheel is repaired by several willing hands. An elderly widow receives help carrying water from the well. A young apprentice follows an experienced craftsman, carefully watching every movement, knowing that one day these skills will become his own. Knowledge is rarely written down. It is passed from hand to hand. From parent to child. From master to apprentice. From one generation to the next. As the warm afternoon sun begins its slow journey toward the western hills, you realize that every trade, no matter how humble it may seem, helps the village thrive. The farmer grows the grain. The blacksmith shapes the iron. The carpenter builds the homes. The spinner makes the thread. The weaver creates the cloth. The potter forms the bowls. No one stands alone. Like the threads woven into a strong piece of cloth, each person's work is connected to the work of everyone else. And together, they create the quiet, dependable rhythm of village life. As evening slowly settles across the countryside, the sounds of hard work begin to fade. The ringing of the blacksmith's hammer grows quiet. The carpenter carefully puts away his tools. The shepherd guides the last of the sheep through the wooden gate, counting them one by one before securing the fence for the night. The village has worked well today. Now, it is time to rest. Smoke rises gently from every cottage as supper cooks over glowing hearths. The warm smell of barley stew, fresh bread, and herbs drifts through the cool evening air, reminding everyone that another day's labor has earned another simple meal. You walk slowly along the village path, noticing how familiar every face has become. The blacksmith nods as he passes. The baker laughs with a neighbor while carrying an empty flour sack. Children, finally released from their small chores, invent games with sticks, smooth stones, and boundless imagination. Their laughter echoes between the cottages until parents gently call them inside. Tomorrow there will be more work. Tonight there is time to smile. The village itself is much like a large family. People borrow tools from one another. They exchange grain for cloth. A carpenter may repair a farmer's cart, while the farmer later helps bring in the carpenter's harvest. Coins exist, but many everyday exchanges rely on trust, favors, and simple barter. Everyone understands that no single person can do everything alone. A strong community depends upon cooperation. As darkness slowly spreads across the fields, a few neighbors gather near the central well before returning home. They speak about the coming weather, wondering whether rain will arrive before the week's work is finished. One elderly man quietly predicts sunshine. Another is equally certain that heavy clouds are on their way. The sheep appear completely unconcerned with either forecast. Perhaps they possess a wisdom all their own. Inside your cottage, the fire burns warmly once again. The day's work has left your hands tired and your shoulders pleasantly sore. You settle onto a wooden bench beside your family as supper is shared from simple bowls. The conversation is gentle. Someone speaks about repairing a fence tomorrow. Another plans to help a neighbor raise the frame of a new cottage. An apprentice proudly describes the horseshoe he helped shape at the forge, earning an approving smile from the village blacksmith. Every day brings another opportunity to learn. Every task adds another small skill. Over the years, those skills become a lifetime of knowledge. Outside, the stars begin to appear above the quiet village. The night sky stretches endlessly overhead, brilliant and clear. Without the glow of modern lights, every constellation shines brightly, watching over the peaceful countryside just as it has for countless generations. The village grows still. The animals settle. The fires become glowing embers. Families prepare for another night's sleep before tomorrow's sunrise calls them back to work once more. As you lie beneath your wool blanket, you think about everything that keeps this little community alive. Not grand castles. Not wealthy kings. But ordinary people. The farmer patiently tending his fields. The blacksmith shaping glowing iron. The weaver creating warm cloth. The potter forming sturdy bowls. The baker rising before dawn. The carpenter building homes that shelter generations. Each trade is different. Each skill is valuable. Together, they create a village where people depend upon one another with quiet trust and shared purpose. In the England of 900 AD, work is more than a way to survive. It is a way to serve your family, strengthen your neighbors, and help an entire community flourish through every changing season. And as the last embers glow softly in the hearth, you close your eyes, knowing that tomorrow, the village will awaken once again. The sun rises gently over the English countryside, casting long golden rays across fields that have been carefully tended for many months. From your cottage doorway, everything appears calm. The barley sways softly in the breeze. A shepherd leads his flock toward fresh pasture. Smoke curls lazily from the chimneys of neighboring homes. It feels like another ordinary morning. Yet as you shoulder your wooden hoe and begin walking toward the fields, you are reminded of an important truth. Not everything you grow will belong to you. In England during the year 900 AD, most ordinary people are farmers. Their lives revolve around planting, harvesting, repairing fences, caring for animals, and preparing for winter. But above every village stands another layer of society. There are local lords, powerful nobles, and above them, the king himself. You may never meet your king in person. His hall could be many days' journey away. Yet his decisions still shape your daily life. Between your village and the king are local leaders who oversee the surrounding lands. They are responsible for maintaining order, organizing defenses, settling disputes, and ensuring that the king receives the resources he expects. In return, they are granted authority over the land. Your village forms only one small piece of a much larger kingdom. Most days, this larger world feels very far away. You are far more concerned with stubborn weeds than royal politics. A hungry sheep wandering into your vegetable garden is usually a more immediate problem than the latest decision made by distant nobles. History, it seems, has always included paperwork. Even when very little paper is involved. As harvest season approaches, everyone understands that part of the grain collected from the fields will not remain in the village. Some of it must be given as rent or tax. Unlike modern taxes, which are often paid with money, many obligations in 900 AD are fulfilled with goods or labor. A portion of your barley. Several sacks of oats. A few chickens. Wool from your sheep. Or days spent working on land that belongs to your lord. These payments help support those who govern the region and contribute to maintaining roads, defenses, and the households of local rulers. For farming families, however, giving away part of the harvest is rarely easy. Every basket of grain represents months of patient effort. Seeds planted in spring. Weeds removed throughout summer. Long days beneath the autumn sun during harvest. Each handful has been earned through honest labor. So when the time comes to measure what must be given, families naturally hope that enough will remain to feed everyone through the coming winter. Fortunately, a good harvest usually brings relief. The barns are full. The animals are healthy. There is enough grain to meet obligations while still filling the family's own storage bins. A poor harvest is another matter entirely. After weeks of heavy rain or a summer drought, every basket becomes more precious. The same taxes may feel much heavier when there is less to spare. As you continue your work beneath the clear morning sky, these concerns remain quietly in the background. The earth still needs tending. The crops still need care. No matter who sits upon the throne, the fields continue to ask for patient hands. And for the ordinary people of England in the year 900 AD, that simple truth shapes life more than any royal decree ever could. As the afternoon sun climbs higher above the fields, the village settles into another steady day of work. The grain continues to ripen. The sheep graze peacefully along the hillsides. Children carry buckets of water from the well while their parents discuss the coming harvest. For a little while, life feels wonderfully ordinary. Yet every farmer knows that when the harvest is complete, another important task awaits. The grain must be measured. Carefully. Patiently. Fairly. In many villages, local officials or trusted representatives help record what each household owes. There are no printed forms, no calculators, and no neatly organized spreadsheets. Instead, agreements are remembered, witnessed by neighbors, or recorded by scribes in precious handwritten manuscripts. A mistake can matter greatly. Every sack of barley represents weeks of labor beneath the changing seasons. Fortunately, most villages value honesty. People know one another well. Trying to hide an entire harvest from your neighbors would be rather difficult when everyone watched the crops grow from the first green shoots of spring. Once the required portion has been gathered, carts begin carrying grain, wool, and other goods toward larger estates or nearby storehouses. The journey is rarely exciting. The roads are rough. The carts creak loudly with every bump. The ox pulling the load seems entirely convinced that walking just a little slower is an excellent idea. The driver, naturally, has a different opinion. Some disagreements appear to be older than history itself. Not every obligation is paid with food. Sometimes, your payment is your time. This is known as labor service. Instead of giving additional grain, you might spend several days repairing fences, maintaining roads, cutting timber, digging ditches, or helping harvest crops on land belonging to your local lord. These tasks are physically demanding, but they also help maintain the wider community. Roads become easier to travel. Bridges remain safe to cross. Storehouses stay in good repair. Even so, every day spent working elsewhere is a day not spent tending your own fields. Finding the balance is never easy. For many villagers, loyalty is built through familiarity rather than grandeur. The local lord is not simply a distant name. He may occasionally visit nearby settlements, hear disputes between neighbors, or organize defenses if danger threatens the region. Some lords earn respect by treating their people with fairness. Others gain far less admiration. Like people in every age, their character varies greatly. Above the local lord stands the king, whose authority reaches across much of England. Most villagers never see him. Yet they know his influence is real. When new defenses are built against Viking attacks, when laws are announced, or when messengers ride through the countryside carrying royal commands, they are witnessing the reach of the crown. Still, for the ordinary farmer, the greatest concern remains remarkably simple. Will there be enough grain left after every obligation has been met? Enough flour for bread? Enough seed to plant when spring returns? Enough food to carry the family safely through winter? These quiet questions occupy far more of your thoughts than the grand politics of distant halls. Because while kings may shape the kingdom, it is the harvest that shapes everyday life. And as the afternoon shadows begin to lengthen across the fields, the patient work of ordinary people continues, just as it has for countless generations. As evening slowly settles over the countryside, the work of the day comes to an end. The last wagon creaks along the muddy track toward the village, its wooden wheels leaving deep marks in the soft earth. Farmers walk beside their oxen, tired but satisfied. The fields that only hours ago were filled with quiet activity now rest beneath the fading light of the setting sun. Another harvest day has passed. The grain that remains in your family's barn is carefully stacked into neat piles. Every bundle represents security for the months ahead. Your parents count the sacks more than once, not because they enjoy counting, but because every measure matters. Enough grain must be saved for bread. Enough must be kept aside as seed for next spring. Enough must remain to feed the animals. And after all of that, there must still be enough to meet the obligations owed to those who rule the land. It is a careful balance. One that every farming family understands. Inside the cottage, supper is shared around the warm glow of the hearth. Thick barley stew fills the wooden bowls, while fresh bread is broken into generous pieces. The meal is simple, yet it feels well earned after a long day beneath the open sky. As the family eats, conversation turns to the coming winter. Your father quietly wonders whether another load of firewood should be gathered before the first frost arrives. Your mother suggests repairing the roof while the weather is still dry. An elderly grandfather remembers a winter many years ago when heavy snow covered the roads for weeks, making every sack of grain seem even more valuable. The children listen carefully. They are learning that preparing for tomorrow is just as important as working today. Outside, the village grows peaceful. A few neighbors pause beside the well, discussing the harvest before wishing one another a quiet evening. The blacksmith's forge has gone dark. The carpenter's tools have been neatly stored away. Even the sheep have settled into contented silence. The kingdom itself may seem enormous, stretching across rivers, forests, and distant hills. Kings may negotiate with powerful nobles. Messengers may ride from one royal hall to another carrying important news. Armies may defend the realm against outside threats. Yet here, in this little village, life continues according to a gentler rhythm. The seasons, the weather, the harvest. These are the things that shape ordinary lives most deeply. A wise king can bring greater peace. A fair local lord can make difficult years a little easier. But neither can command the rain to fall at exactly the right moment or guarantee a plentiful harvest every autumn. Nature still has the final word. Perhaps that is why the people of 900 AD place such value on patience. They work faithfully through every season, knowing that much of life remains beyond their control. They pay what they owe when they are able. They help their neighbors when times become difficult. And they hope that next year's harvest will be just a little better than the last. As darkness spreads across the English countryside, the stars slowly appear overhead, bright and countless above the quiet fields. The fire settles into glowing embers. One by one, your family prepares for sleep beneath thick wool blankets. Tomorrow, the sun will rise once more. The fields will call for patient hands. The animals will need tending. Life will continue much as it always has. And although kings, lords, and taxes are all part of the world beyond your cottage door, it is the strength of ordinary families, their hard work, careful planning, and quiet resilience, that truly keeps the kingdom alive. With that comforting thought, you close your eyes. The fire glows softly. The village sleeps peacefully. And another ordinary day in England, in the year 900 AD, gently comes to its end. The morning sun has barely risen when you tighten the leather strap holding your small bundle of belongings. Today, unlike most days, you are leaving the village. It is not a journey taken for pleasure. In England during the year 900 AD, few people travel simply to see new places. Most journeys have a practical purpose. Perhaps you are carrying grain to a nearby market. Perhaps you are visiting relatives in another village. Or perhaps your local lord has asked you to deliver an important message. Whatever the reason, every journey begins with careful preparation. You pack only what you truly need. A small loaf of coarse bread. A piece of hard cheese. A wooden flask filled with water or weak ale. A wool cloak in case the weather changes. There is no room for unnecessary weight. Everything must be carried by hand or loaded onto a patient packhorse. Before leaving, your family gathers outside the cottage. They offer quiet words of encouragement and remind you to return before too many days have passed. Long journeys always carry uncertainty, and saying goodbye feels a little more important than it might in the modern world. You set off along the narrow dirt road leading away from the village. Calling it a road is perhaps a generous description. Most routes are little more than well-worn tracks carved into the earth by generations of travelers, farmers, carts, and wandering livestock. After several days of rain, they become thick ribbons of mud. During dry summers, they harden into rough, uneven paths scattered with stones and deep ruts left by wagon wheels. Every step requires attention. The countryside around you is beautiful. Rolling green hills stretch into the distance. Ancient oak trees cast long shadows across open meadows. Small streams sparkle in the morning light, while birds sing cheerfully from the hedgerows. Yet the peaceful landscape also reminds you how isolated much of England is. Villages are separated by miles of fields and woodland. There are no signposts pointing the way. No maps folded neatly into your pocket. No friendly voice announcing, "In 2 miles, turn left." Instead, you follow familiar landmarks. A large standing stone. A twisted old oak. The bend of a river. A small wooden bridge built by local villagers years ago. These features become your guide. Fortunately, many paths are well known to those who use them regularly. Merchants, monks, farmers, and messengers have walked these same routes for generations, leaving behind not written directions, but shared memory. As the morning grows warmer, you continue your steady pace, listening to the crunch of gravel beneath your boots and the quiet rustle of leaves overhead. The journey has only just begun. And already, you understand that in the England of 900 AD, travel is measured not by speed, but by patience. As the hours pass, the village disappears behind the rolling hills. Only the narrow road stretches ahead of you now, winding through open fields, dense woodlands, and quiet valleys. The cheerful sounds of home have faded, replaced by birdsong, the gentle breeze moving through the trees, and the steady rhythm of your own footsteps. Travel in England during the year 900 AD is rarely quick. Most people walk. A fortunate traveler may ride a horse or lead a pack mule carrying goods, but these animals are valuable and not every family can afford one. Walking remains the most common way to journey from one place to another. A trip of 20 miles can easily take an entire day. If the weather turns bad, it may take even longer. By midday, the sun shines warmly overhead. You stop beside a clear stream flowing over smooth stones. The cool water offers a welcome chance to refill your wooden flask, while a nearby oak provides welcome shade. Sitting upon a fallen log, you break off a piece of coarse bread and a little hard cheese. It is a simple meal. Yet after several hours of walking, it tastes remarkably satisfying. Before long, another traveler appears along the road. He is a merchant leading 2 heavily loaded packhorses. Their backs carry bundles of wool, pottery, and small iron tools, carefully tied beneath thick leather straps. The merchant offers a friendly greeting before asking whether the road ahead remains clear. Travelers often exchange information. A bridge washed away by recent rain. A muddy stretch of road best avoided. A nearby village offering food and shelter. In a world without newspapers or telephones, conversations like these become an important way of sharing news. After wishing one another safe journeys, you continue on your way. The path soon enters a thick woodland. Tall oak, ash, and beech trees rise high above your head, their branches weaving together to create a cool green canopy. Sunlight filters gently through the leaves, creating shifting patterns across the forest floor. The woods are peaceful. Yet they also demand caution. Tree roots twist across the path, ready to catch an unwary foot. After heavy rain, muddy patches hide beneath fallen leaves. Wild animals such as wolves have become uncommon in much of England by this time, but foxes, wild boar, and curious deer still roam these forests. The greatest danger, however, is often becoming lost. Many woodland paths look remarkably alike. A wrong turn can add hours to your journey. For this reason, experienced travelers pay close attention to familiar landmarks, the shape of a hill, the course of a stream, or a particularly ancient oak that has stood watch over the road for generations. As afternoon slowly approaches, the forest begins to thin. Ahead, you catch your first glimpse of another small village resting beside a winding river. Thin columns of smoke rise peacefully into the sky. Children's laughter drifts faintly across the fields. After many miles of quiet walking, the sight is wonderfully comforting. For every traveler in the year 900 AD, a friendly village at the end of a long road feels almost as welcoming as home itself. As the afternoon slowly fades toward evening, the road becomes quieter. The few travelers you met earlier have continued on their own journeys, leaving you alone with the gentle sounds of nature. The breeze stirs the branches overhead, birds call from the hedgerows, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell rings faintly across the countryside. You still have several miles to walk before reaching your destination. In the year 900 AD, few roads are safe after dark. There are no lanterns lining the paths. No inns waiting around every bend. No helpful signs pointing the way. Once the sun disappears below the horizon, familiar landmarks become difficult to recognize, and even a well-known road can seem strangely unfamiliar. For that reason, experienced travelers always keep a careful eye on the sky. The position of the sun tells them how much daylight remains. Clouds gathering in the west may signal rain before nightfall. A cool breeze reminds them that the evenings can become surprisingly cold, even after a pleasant afternoon. Preparation is as important as courage. Eventually, you reach a small wooden bridge crossing a gentle river. The bridge creaks softly beneath your boots, reminding you that it has carried countless travelers over many years. Below, the water flows quietly around smooth stones, reflecting the golden colors of the setting sun. You pause for a moment. The journey has been long. Your feet ache. Your shoulders feel heavy beneath your pack. Yet there is also something peaceful about traveling through the English countryside. Without the noise of wagons rushing past or crowds filling the roads, you notice details that might otherwise go unseen. A kingfisher flashes brilliant blue as it schemes across the river. A family of rabbits disappears into the tall grass. Wildflowers sway gently beside the path, visited by busy bees making their final flights of the day. Even on difficult journeys, beauty quietly accompanies you. As the shadows lengthen, you finally see your destination. A small village rests beyond the river, surrounded by fields ready for harvest. Thin streams of smoke rise from the cottages, carrying the comforting scent of wood fires into the evening air. People are returning home after a full day's work. Children laugh as they help gather the last chickens into their wooden coop. An elderly woman waves kindly as you approach the village gate. She has likely welcomed many weary travelers over the years. Hospitality is an important custom. A stranger may be offered a place beside the fire, a bowl of warm stew, or a corner of the floor to sleep for the night. Tomorrow, that same traveler may continue the journey refreshed, carrying both gratitude and news from distant places. In this way, roads do more than connect villages. They connect people. They carry merchants bringing useful goods. Messengers delivering important news. Pilgrims traveling in faith. Families visiting loved ones. And ordinary men and women simply trying to reach home before darkness falls. As you sit beside the welcoming hearth of your host's cottage, you think back on the miles you have walked today. The muddy tracks. The peaceful forest. The winding river. The friendly merchant. The quiet beauty of England's countryside. Travel may be slow. It may be tiring. And at times, it may even feel uncertain. But every journey also offers new friendships, fresh stories, and a deeper appreciation for the people and landscapes that make up this remarkable land. Outside, the stars begin to fill the night sky, shining brightly above the silent road you traveled only hours before. Tomorrow, that road will welcome new footsteps. New wagons. New travelers. And countless more stories waiting to unfold. For now, however, your journey is complete. The fire is warm. Your meal is simple but satisfying. The morning arrives gently over the village. A cool breeze stirs the leaves of the ancient oak tree that has stood beside the church for longer than anyone can remember. The fields shimmer with dew, and the familiar sounds of another day slowly awaken the countryside. As you step outside, you notice an elderly man already sitting on a wooden bench near his cottage. He is in no hurry. His hands, rough from decades of farming, rest comfortably upon a sturdy walking stick polished smooth by years of use. His silver hair catches the first rays of sunlight, and deep lines across his face tell a story that no written book could ever fully capture. In England during the year 900 AD, growing old is something both ordinary and remarkable. Life is physically demanding. Every season asks something of the body. Fields must be plowed, firewood gathered, water carried, animals cared for. Years of such work leave their mark. A farmer's shoulders become broad but worn. A blacksmith's hands grow thick with calluses. A weaver's fingers remain nimble but stiff after countless hours at the loom. The body remembers every harvest. Yet reaching old age is considered a blessing. Many people never have the opportunity. Illness, difficult childbirth, accidents, and harsh winters mean that not everyone lives to see their hair turn gray. Those who do are respected not because they are wealthy, but because they have survived experiences that younger generations can only imagine. They have seen years of plentiful harvests. And years when the fields produced almost nothing. They remember peaceful seasons. And times when fear spread through the countryside. Their memories become one of the village's greatest treasures. Without books in every home, history lives in people. Children often gather around grandparents in the evening, listening as familiar stories unfold beside the warm glow of the hearth. The tales are not always about famous kings or great battles. More often, they are about ordinary life. The winter when the river froze solid. The summer when the bees filled every apple tree. The stubborn cow that somehow wandered into the churchyard during Sunday worship. According to grandfather, the priest was remarkably patient. The cow seemed less interested in the sermon. The children laugh every time the story is told. And perhaps that is part of its purpose. Growing old does not simply mean carrying more years. It also means carrying more memories. And in the quiet villages of medieval England, those memories are among the richest gifts an elder can share. As the afternoon sun warms the village, the pace of life becomes a little gentler for the oldest members of the community. The strongest young men are busy in the fields, guiding plows or gathering the harvest. Women carry baskets of vegetables, bake bread, and spin wool into thread. Children run back and forth with endless energy, eager to help however they can. The elders still contribute. Their work is simply different now. An elderly grandmother sits outside her cottage with a basket of freshly carded wool resting beside her. Her hands move slowly but with remarkable skill, drawing soft fibers into fine thread using a simple drop spindle. She has performed this task for so many years that every movement feels natural, almost effortless. Nearby, another elder patiently repairs a fishing net. A broken tool handle is carefully replaced. A wooden basket is woven from flexible willow branches gathered along the riverbank. These jobs demand experience more than strength. Age has not taken away their usefulness. It has simply changed it. Young parents often seek the advice of older relatives. A grandmother knows which herbs have long been used to soothe a cough or calm an upset stomach. A grandfather can look at the clouds and offer a thoughtful guess about tomorrow's weather. They remember when to plant certain crops, how to store grain through a damp winter, and how to recognize the first signs that spring is finally returning. Not every piece of advice is perfect. But it is built upon decades of observation. In a world where very little is written down, experience becomes the village's greatest library. The elderly also help care for the youngest children. While parents spend long hours working in the fields, grandparents watch curious little ones as they explore the safety of the village. They tell stories, sing familiar songs, and gently remind adventurous toddlers that chickens, despite their confident appearance, are surprisingly difficult to catch. The chickens, naturally, seem to enjoy proving this point. Laughter often follows. As evening approaches, several older villagers gather beneath the large oak tree near the church. They sit together on simple wooden benches, watching the younger generation finish the day's work. Conversation flows easily between old friends. They speak of harvests from many years ago. Neighbors who have long since passed away. Children who are now parents themselves. The village has changed slowly over the decades. New cottages have been built. Young trees have grown into sturdy oaks. Babies have become grandparents. Time moves quietly here. There is comfort in that steady rhythm. As the golden afternoon light begins to soften, you realize that growing old in the England of 900 AD is not only about surviving many years. It is about becoming a guide, a teacher, a storyteller. Someone whose wisdom helps the next generation face the same changing seasons with a little more confidence and a little less fear. As evening slowly settles across the village, a peaceful stillness returns to the countryside. The day's work is nearly finished. Farmers lead their oxen back to the byres, shepherds count their sheep one final time, and the last bundles of firewood are stacked neatly beside the cottages. The air smells of wood smoke, fresh bread, and cooling earth. It is a familiar ending to another ordinary day. You walk slowly toward the old oak tree near the church, where several elderly villagers are enjoying the last warmth of the setting sun. They sit quietly, watching children play across the village green. The little ones laugh as they chase one another between the cottages, their voices carrying through the evening air. The elders smile. Many years ago, they were those children. Now, they watch a new generation grow. Time moves gently in this village. No one notices it from one day to the next. But over many seasons, everything changes. The saplings planted in childhood have become towering trees. Tiny cottages have grown into family homes filled with grandchildren. Young apprentices have become skilled craftsmen. And the children who once listened to bedtime stories now tell those same stories to their own sons and daughters. That quiet passing of knowledge is one of the greatest gifts of old age. There are no shelves filled with books in most homes. There are no photographs to preserve familiar faces. Instead, memories are carried in conversation. An elderly grandmother remembers the year the harvest was so plentiful that every barn overflowed with grain. A grandfather recalls helping repair the village bridge after a great spring flood. Another remembers hearing stories from his own grandfather about the days when Viking ships were seen more often along the rivers. Each story connects one generation to the next. Without realizing it, every listener becomes the future storyteller. Of course, growing old also brings challenges. The long years of hard work leave aching backs, stiff knees, and hands shaped by countless seasons of labor. Eyesight becomes less sharp. Walking takes a little longer than it once did. The heavy work of plowing fields or chopping timber gradually passes to younger hands. Yet the elders rarely stop contributing. There is always wool to spin, fishing nets to mend, children to teach, advice to offer when someone asks. And sometimes, simply being present beside the fire is enough. A calm voice can bring comfort during difficult times. A familiar smile can ease a worried heart. In a small village where everyone knows one another, every person remains important. As darkness spreads across the countryside, families gather around their hearths for the evening meal. The youngest children curl beside their grandparents, eager for one last story before sleep. Perhaps it is the tale of a clever fox, or a brave shepherd, or simply a funny memory from many years ago, told so often that everyone already knows the ending. They listen anyway. Some stories become better with every telling. Outside, the stars slowly appear, bright and countless above the quiet English countryside. The same constellations watched over your grandparents, their grandparents before them, and countless generations stretching back beyond memory. There is something deeply comforting in that thought. Life changes. People grow. Children become adults. Adults become elders. And eventually, each person leaves behind memories for others to carry forward. As the fire settles into glowing embers, you pull your wool blanket a little closer around your shoulders. The cottage grows wonderfully quiet. Tomorrow, the village will wake once again. The rooster will crow before sunrise. The fields will call for patient hands. Children will laugh. Neighbors will help one another. The day is drawing to its gentle close. The golden light of the afternoon has softened into the warm amber glow of early evening. Across the English countryside, long shadows stretch over quiet fields where barley and oats have swayed beneath the summer breeze since sunrise. The work is finished now. The farmer rests his wooden hoe against the cottage wall. The shepherd guides the last few sheep through the gate, counting each familiar face before fastening the latch. The blacksmith pours water over the glowing coals of his forge, and with a gentle hiss, another day's labor comes to an end. Slowly, the village becomes quiet. Smoke rises lazily from every thatched roof, carrying the comforting scent of burning oak and freshly baked bread into the cool evening air. Chickens settle onto their wooden perches. The village dogs curl beside warm hearths, already half asleep after following their owners throughout the day. It has been an ordinary day. And perhaps that is exactly what makes it so precious. You stand for a moment outside your cottage, looking across the little village that has become your home. When this journey began, the world of 900 AD may have seemed distant and unfamiliar. A place of rough roads, simple homes, and difficult lives. Yet after walking through the seasons alongside its people, something else has become clear. This is not simply a story about hardship. It is a story about ordinary human lives. You have planted crops beside patient farmers. Built cottages before winter arrived. Searched for food each morning. Worked through the changing seasons. Cooked simple meals over an open fire. Watched children grow into adults. Listened to the wisdom of elders. Prayed in small village churches. Walked uncertain roads. Lived with both hope and fear. Through every chapter, one truth has quietly remained the same. Life has always been built from small moments. A shared loaf of bread. A neighbor offering help without being asked. Children laughing beside the village well. The warmth of a fire after a long day's work. History often remembers kings, battles, and great events. But most people never stood upon a battlefield. Most never entered a royal hall. Instead, they lived lives much like the ones you have quietly explored. They woke before sunrise. Worked with steady hands. Loved their families. Helped their neighbors. And hoped for peaceful tomorrows. As evening settles over medieval England, the first stars begin to appear above the village. They shine just as brightly now as they did more than 1,000 years ago. And beneath that endless sky, the simple rhythm of ordinary life continues, calm and unhurried, carrying one peaceful day gently into the next. The evening grows quieter with every passing moment. The last golden light slips gently beyond the western hills, leaving the countryside wrapped in soft shades of blue and silver. A cool breeze moves through the barley fields, creating slow waves that shimmer beneath the fading sky. The village settles into its nightly rhythm. Inside each cottage, families gather around the warmth of the hearth. The fire crackles softly, casting dancing shadows across timber walls that have sheltered generations through countless winters and summers. The day's work is finally over. Wooden bowls are filled with warm barley stew. Fresh bread is shared from hand to hand. Simple conversations drift through the room, unhurried and familiar. Someone speaks about tomorrow's weather. Another wonders whether the apples will be ready to gather before the week's end. A child proudly tells the story of helping carry water from the well without spilling a single drop. Perhaps the bucket was only half full. But the achievement is celebrated all the same. The adults smile. The child smiles even more. It is easy, from the modern world, to imagine the people of medieval England as strangers living unimaginably different lives. Yet as you sit beside the fire, that feeling slowly begins to disappear. Their tools were different. Their homes were simpler. Their knowledge of the world was smaller. But their hopes were wonderfully familiar. They wished for healthy children. For enough food to last through winter. For peaceful neighbors. For fair weather during harvest. For another ordinary morning. Across the village, an elderly grandmother gently hums a lullaby as she rocks her youngest grandchild to sleep. The melody is quiet. No one knows exactly how old the song is. Perhaps her own grandmother once sang these same gentle notes. Perhaps it has traveled across generations for longer than anyone can remember. Some traditions survive because they are written in books. Others survive because loving voices refuse to let them disappear. Outside, the stars now cover the sky in astonishing numbers. Without bright towns or city lights, the heavens appear endless. The familiar constellations shine over every cottage, every church, every winding river, and every lonely woodland path. The same stars watched over Roman soldiers. They watched over Viking sailors crossing the sea. They watched over kings inside their halls. And they watched over ordinary villagers whose names have long since been forgotten. History often remembers the famous. But the stars remember everyone equally. You think back over everything you have experienced during this quiet journey through the year 900 AD. You learned how a home was built before winter arrived. How bread was baked from carefully harvested grain. How faith offered comfort during uncertain times. How neighbors stood together through illness, harsh weather, and difficult seasons. How children grew into adults, and adults into respected elders. None of these moments changed the course of history. Yet together, they created something far more important. A life. A simple, honest, meaningful life. As the fire burns lower, the voices around you grow softer. One by one, family members prepare for sleep. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise. Another day of work. Another chance to care for one another. And in that quiet promise, there is a peaceful kind of happiness that needs no grand celebration. The fire has almost burned itself into glowing embers. Only an occasional crackle breaks the silence inside the cottage. Beyond the small wooden window, the village has fallen asleep. The day's footsteps have disappeared from the muddy paths, and even the animals rest peacefully beneath the quiet night sky. The world has become wonderfully still. You wrap your wool blanket a little closer around your shoulders and listen. The gentle whisper of the wind moving through the trees. The soft breathing of your family. The distant call of an owl somewhere beyond the edge of the forest. These are the sounds that have ended countless evenings in England for generations. They ask for nothing. They simply remind you that another day has come to a peaceful close. As you reflect on everything you have seen, you begin to understand that history is not only the story of great kings or famous battles. It is also the story of ordinary mornings. Of bread rising beside a warm hearth. Of children learning from patient parents. Of neighbors helping repair a damaged roof after a storm. Of old friends sharing quiet conversation beneath an ancient oak. These moments rarely appear in history books. Yet they are the moments that filled most people's lives. The men and women of 900 AD were not so different from us. They worried about their families. They celebrated small successes. They grieved when they lost someone they loved. They laughed at simple jokes. They hoped tomorrow would be kind. The centuries between your world and theirs may seem impossibly long. But the human heart changes far more slowly than tools or buildings ever do. Love. Kindness. Curiosity. Hope. These have always belonged to humanity. Perhaps that is the quiet lesson hidden within this journey. Life has never been perfect. Not in medieval England. Not today. Every generation has faced uncertainty. Every generation has carried burdens that seemed heavy at the time. Yet every generation has also found reasons to smile. To share meals. To care for children. To build homes. To plant seeds whose harvest they might not even live to see. There is something deeply comforting about that thought. Outside, the stars continue their silent journey across the heavens. The same moon that shines above your little village tonight will rise again tomorrow. It has watched over Roman Britain, Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, Viking voyages, Norman castles yet to come, and every generation that has walked these quiet fields. Long after this single evening has passed, it will continue watching over those who follow. The fire grows softer still. Its warm glow fades from bright orange to deep red. One by one, the embers settle into gentle silence. Tomorrow, before dawn, someone will kneel beside the hearth and patiently coax the fire back to life. The rooster will crow. The sheep will wander into the fields. Fresh bread will bake. Children will laugh. Neighbors will greet one another. Life will begin again, just as it has for countless ordinary days across countless ordinary years. And perhaps that is the greatest wonder of all. Not the castles. Not the crowns. Not the battles remembered in history. But the quiet strength of ordinary people, who greeted each sunrise with patient hands, generous hearts, and the simple determination to care for those around them. As your eyes grow heavy, you take one last look at the peaceful village resting beneath the stars. The cottages stand quietly together. The church rests upon its little hill. The fields stretch into the darkness, waiting for another morning. Everything is calm. Everything is still. And now, your own journey through England in the year 900 AD comes gently to its end. May the warmth of the hearth, the whisper of the wind through the ancient oaks, and the peaceful rhythm of this long-forgotten village stay with you as you drift into a deep and restful sleep. Good night.